Welcome everyone back to the Damage When I'm John Iadarola. This is not just a day in news. This is a day in the middle of the complete breakdown of the justice system in multiple areas. Too much has been happening. None of it good. I'm trying to think if I missed something, but I don't think I have. The world is in chaos. It's burning up and the courts won't stop. And so we decided we're gonna bring someone on to help us break this down. So we're very lucky to be joined on the show by Adrienne Lawrence. Adrienne, how's it going?
I'm doing the best I can during this kind of intellectual apocalypse.
Yeah. You're the host of Overruled.
Yes, and I've been busy.
Can you overrule any of this, please?
Unfortunately, I don't have that power.
We've got a lot of different stuff that we're gonna delve into. Just briefly though, we responded to the breaking news about Bill Cosby yesterday, and we assumed, that's gonna be the big thing that sucks that we all have to deal with. And obviously that was just the first of many things, some of which we're gonna break down. But and I know that you, I was reading your tweets and you read the entire decision.
Yes,
so I'm just curious, like, as you're basically the only expert that I've actually talked about this. I've expressed my opinions, I've absorbed tons of them. Do you have a different reaction to any of the stuff yesterday as a result of your background and the reading of the decision?
Let's see. So particularly when it comes to Bill Cosby, or like all of the stuff from yesterday?
Let's start with the Bill Cosby here.
So with regard to Bill Cosby, it just feels like this is one of those unfortunate seminal points in time where courts decide to make new law. They decide to make a rule that benefits the masses. And an unfortunate aspect of that means that someone who is more than likely very culpable is going to go free. And so it was a big day for survivors, for individuals who believe in justice, to try to balance that sense of justice, because you want courts to get it right, but at the same time, you want bad people to be locked up. And in this situation, we couldn't have both.
Yeah. So, but according to their logic, they did have a point or whatever about the process that put him in jail.
Yes, the point really is that prosecutors cannot essentially promise not to prosecute you and usher you or encourage you to go testify without your Fifth Amendment right, which is what happens when you're in a civil suit. And that's what happened here, where Bill Cosby essentially was facing a prosecutor with potential criminal charges. And the prosecutor said, I'm not gonna prosecute you, you can move on your way. And then there was a civil suit brought against Bill Cosby where he doesn't have a right to say, I'm not gonna testify under the Fifth Amendment. And so he ended up making statements in that civil suit, and then a prosecutor comes right behind him and says, I'm gonna take those statements now and prosecute you, in fact. And so this is good that the court said, you know what, prosecutors can't do that. When they give you their promise, it has to stick. And so that's good for individuals moving forward when it comes to our individual rights as accused. But at the same time, it does mean Bill Cosby goes free.
Okay, that's fair, well taken. But I have a follow-up question.
Yeah.
Why couldn't they get him on any of the other stuff? I mean, like, that guy is like record breaking in the crimes that he's apparently committed over so long. There's so many women. Yeah. How did it come down to one prosecutor who's like, whatever, I don't care, I'm not gonna do anything? Like, how did it come down to that? How did they not just, okay, so we can't get you on that one. Well, there's 50 plus other women. Like, what? How does the system not have any way of getting at him?
I love that you brought up that point. Because in giving my analysis, and I posted an overruled video on this, my analysis was limited to this case, which was a prosecution for sexually assaulting Andrea Constand, that one individual. And so it doesn't include all of the other women who come forward. It doesn't analyze their cases. It doesn't have anything to do with their cases. The court has to limit its focus. And that's also what I limited my focus to, that in this particular instance, Andrea Constand was the victim here that sustained the conviction. And because of the circumstances, he has to go free. The reason that the prosecutors aren't necessarily going to bring charges again using any of the other women's stories is because of the statute of limitation. Oftentimes it's already lapsed. And so we did see post Me Too, we saw a number of states passing laws to say that, you know what, we're gonna remove the statute of limitations here, because there were a lot of events that happened decades ago that people are now just essentially mustering the courage because of how our society shames people. They're ready to come forward or to speak up, but because there were statute of limitations set, saying maybe only had 10 years, that time has since lapsed. And so that's why prosecutors are unable to pursue the other women's cases, in addition to the fact that the evidence may not be there. And this was a second trial for Bill Cosby. So people are already questionable when it's just a he said, she said situation.
Yeah. Although, as was pointed out by a comedian that I retweeted, it's like she said it's a classic case of he said, she said, she said, she said, she said, she said, and then you just go on until you run out of characters. I want to ask you one more question, and I swear we're gonna get to a rundown. This isn't on a rundown, I'm just fascinated, and I want to use Adrienne's expertise while we have it. I know that I'm a person who talks at a YouTube camera about politics, so I'm supposed to believe that everything I believe is totally right and totally founded. Especially white males tend to have that proclivity, but I don't. I want to learn. So statutes of limitations, should that exist? Like, is there a case to be made? Because it seems like it's kind of just a way to get out from justice. But again, I'm not an expert. So what do you think about it?
Okay, so statute of limitations, and for anyone who's unfamiliar with that term, that's the period of time that you can bring a claim, a suit, or a criminal conviction. So if it's 3 years, you can't do it after that. And when it comes to how our society has set up the statute of limitations, of course, because white men have run the game, white men have set the statute of limitations for certain crimes. For murder, there is no statute of limitations. You can always be held accountable because murder is so heinous. It's what they call a male in se type crime. That's a Latin term. That means it's inherently wrong. You don't need a statute to tell you don't murder. It's the same thing with rape. But unfortunately, hey, you've got legislature out there who says, no, we'll give you 10 years to come forward. Until then, good luck. And so that becomes problematic because, again, as we mentioned, society has not been welcoming, particularly of women, to come forward, where there were even allowances for years to essentially slut shame or to blame the victim. And also juries, which are a representation of society, were unwilling to convict rapists unless it was something that involved heinous physical force. It depended also on the race of the victim. For a long time, it's been held and continue is the fact that thought that Black women could not be raped because we are not innocent by definition. And so there were so many reasons people weren't coming forward, and thus these statute of limitation bars become problematic when people are ready.
Not innocent by nature?
Yes, that is something that is long held, and that's why, in part, Black women are hypersexualized. And so, yeah, there's a time, and there are also opinions out there where they'd say you can't rape a Black woman; it's impossible, because it's the thought that we are sexualized Jezebels. And so, unfortunately, that's a stereotype that continues to play out, and why oftentimes Black women will not come forward with sexual assaults, because it's the thought that we were never victims to begin with. A lot of these stereotypes will follow all sorts of groups in some way that will prevent them from seeking justice, because what's the point when you're not going to get it?
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, thank you for all that. I do appreciate that. That said, there's a lot that we're going to be getting to through the course of our show today. Thank you everyone for being here. Please hit the like button, share the stream if you haven't already, so that people know we're live as we launch into this rundown. And we will be responding during our breaks to your comments, tweets, super chats, all of that as we always do. Early heads up, by the way, that after the show, you can of course tune into to Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Ritchie. That is coming up right afterward. Malika Jabali is going to be the co-host, senior news and politics editor for Essence, who you've seen a couple times on the Damage Report, is going to be the co-host for the show with Dr. Rashad. Carrie Sheffield, a conservative, will be appearing as well as Dr. Pamela Gurley. So big show coming up after this. But first, the Damage Report. So let's jump into some of this news. There's too much. I'm just gonna say that in advance. There's too much. It's Big News Thursday. So here we go. As was predicted earlier this week, the charges against the Trump org and at least one of the individuals involved there are coming. We don't know the exact content necessarily. Perhaps it will break during this show. But this morning, Donald J. Trump's long-serving chief financial officer, Allen Weisselberg, surrendered to the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. Prosecutors are expected to unseal an indictment later in the day against both Mr. Weisselberg and the Trump organization. So you've probably heard his name in the news over the past few years, but if you haven't, he served as the Trump organization's financial gatekeeper for more than 2 decades and recently ran the business with Mr. Trump's adult sons by certain definitions while Mr. Trump was in the White House. So as a part of the inquiry that's been ongoing, prosecutors in the office of the district attorney, Cyrus Vance Jr., have been examining whether Mr. Weisselberg failed to pay taxes on valuable benefits he and his family received from Mr. Trump, including private school tuition for at least one of his grandchildren, free apartments, and leased cars. So we're expecting that that's going to be a part of what's revealed later on today. We don't know all the details yet, but we do know that according to Weisselberg's lawyers, he intends to plead not guilty and he will fight these charges in court. So, Adrienne, again, with all those, we don't know certain details of this. So those caveats are out there. What do you think about this? What do you expect to come of this, if anything?
Oh, I think they're trying to essentially push up on Weisselberg to get him to flip on Trump. Because generally, prosecutors do not bring charges for failure to pay taxes on fringe benefits. That is a rarity. This is pretty unprecedented. Because only when these charges are brought, it's part of a larger case. So it's kind of like an add-on. So the fact that they are bringing these charges in isolation, what that tells us is the prosecutors are probably trying to get Weisselberg to flip in some way so that they can build out a larger case against Trump and Trump's organization.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. It's also the case that's being made by the Trump organization that put out a statement saying that Mr. Weisselberg is being used as a pawn in a scorched earth attempt to harm the former president. I think that's probably a part of it, certainly. I mean, certainly he's being used as a pawn insofar as they're trying to use him to get more information. And I definitely think that some of the people involved in this probably wouldn't mind harming the former president. If they're rational people, they should have that as a goal in their life. I do. That said, Trump organization has almost certainly broken so many laws. The thing that bothers me so far, Adrienne, I don't know what you think about this, is that the stuff that they're describing, like that has to be the least significant law breaking that's going on in the Trump organization. If things are happening, paying taxes on his Benz seems like a small thing in comparison to all of what at least has been alleged by people like Michael Cohen about insurance fraud and the devaluation and then overvaluation of real estate, tax issues and all that. This seems like one of the most minor things. But my question to you is, I don't know what the potential penalties for this sort of thing are. If the goal is to get him to flip, does this seem like enough potentially to do that, considering that Donald Trump has said that Weisselberg is like 100% loyal for a long time? He would never turn on me.
You know, it makes me think of Al Capone and the fact that there were a lot of things he did, but he got busted on tax evasion. So, the thought that someone who is engaged in far more criminality only gets busted for something little is very much a federal prosecutor's kind of way in to really get them and get them good. And so Weisselberg being what I believe 73 years old, he may actually face some kind of considerable punishment in the event that he's convicted, because one thing we do have to consider is how many instances of the potential criminality are possible. So even if this fringe benefits, it only carries, let's say, possibly maybe a year in prison, then if there are 20 instances of that, hey, you never know if a judge wants to go ahead and make it consecutive instead of concurrent, then you could spend the rest of your twilight years, in an 8x8 cell on the bottom bunk. So the thought that Weisselberg could potentially turn on his bestie Trump, it'll be interesting, especially since we all know Trump and he could possibly turn on Weisselberg. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, just judging by the photo that we brought up of him, he doesn't seem like he's made for spending the rest of his life in prison. I imagine it's tough for everyone, obviously. But yeah, perhaps. Wouldn't it be weird if he spends the rest of his life in jail for not paying taxes on his Benz or whatever, but Cosby's out?
Well, there's also, I guess there's also potential evidence that essentially his son was getting a Manhattan apartment and a full salary while we're working at the Trump organization ice rink in Central Park. It's like there seems to be a bunch of money funneling through using these things that aren't being covered as taxes. And so, Weisselberg, he's been around for a long time. He probably knows where the bodies are buried and participated in burying them. He might really be like, I ain't going down for this sucker. No, I'll go ahead and I'll rat out. You never know.
We'll see. I mean, look, I'm sure he'll want to if it'll save him. The thing is, I can't imagine that Trump had anything to do with any of this. Totally clean, that guy. He's not gonna get involved in financial impropriety, trying to defraud the government potentially to make money. Why? He doesn't need to. He's a billionaire. Why would he be so petty financially?
Good. Oh, wow. You know what? That's a really good point. And I also think that Weisselberg, he could go in full Shawshank this. Like, he could go into prison and just do Andy Dufresne style. He could be doing taxes for guards and actually live pretty well. You never know.
It's been a very long time since I watched that, but I think I understand the reference.
You're killing me, man.
I know. I need to rewatch it. Okay, now with that, I've joked about what I think Trump's exposure is, but what does he think? Well, while we're currently waiting to find out exactly what the charges against Allen Weisselberg and the Trump organization might be, what we're not expecting, according to sources, are any charges specifically against Donald Trump. Because this is America, and why would you expect justice, you dummy? But anyway, last night when Trump was doing a town hall with Sean Hannity, they barely even referenced the impending charges because that would require Sean Hannity to have some sort of like journalistic ethics and to believe that like impending major news is worth bringing up to the president. But anyway, it came up very briefly with Donald Trump listing his past legal battles. He said, New York radical left prosecutors come after me. You got to always fight. You got to keep fighting. That was as much as they talked about it. He had a former president whose organization is facing criminal charges the next day, didn't even bring it up. Sean Hannity, hell of a journalist. But anyway, that doesn't mean that he doesn't have a reaction. We just won't get it directly from him. According to Political Playbook, the former president was on a conference call on Monday with his advisors discussing his favorite topic, revenge. And by the way, the playbook doesn't go any more into detail about what they were talking about when it comes to revenge. Just revenge, like the concept. Is it best served cold? I don't know. What do you think? But anyway, he was interrupted with an update on the investigation. He was told he would not be personally indicted, only Weisselberg and the Trump organization. Trump was thrilled by what he saw as light charges. And according to one of the advisors on the call, his mind raced to 2024. Just wait until 2024, you'll see. The former president implied that the legal case would be seen as a political witch hunt that would backfire on Democrats. This is going to hurt Sleepy Joe. So what do you know? He interpreted news events as being beneficial to him and thinks that everything is a witch hunt. How weird, I never saw that coming. But is this a win, Adrienne? I mean, every source that I'm seeing says they could, like whether he's never charged or not, the organization could be caught up in legal troubles that would be time consuming and consume a lot of money. They say it could potentially bring down the corporation. That seems bad. I don't know, what do you think?
Well, it's funny because bringing down the Trump corporation, it's like how many of Trump's corporations have ever stood up? A lot of them are bankrupt anyways. So kind of almost shoulder shrugs. If anything, it'll just make one less potential channel for Trump to funnel money through and not pay the taxes on. Trump, he always likes to self-aggrandize and just say, oh, it didn't hurt, it's no big deal. I do appreciate that these are lower level charges, and on first glance, I'm sure Trump thought it's a win, but he's an absolute fool if he thinks that there's not going to be more and that this is not setting him up in some way to potentially lose Weisselberg as someone on his side.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It reeks of like to use a really outdated analogy. It reeks of like The Simpsons with the pig flying. It's still good. It's still good. It goes into like a slime infested river. And like Trump, man, he will eat that pig, metaphorically and literally. But anyway, so here is something that I'm just gonna add one extra detail from Playbook that makes it even sadder. So my belief, and I think my preference as a person who can only take so much cringiness, I can get through most of Scott's tots, but I fast forward through a bit of it. My preference was that Trump and his theories about becoming president again, like in 2 months, is a grift. He doesn't believe it. He's just telling that to the rubes to get them to give him money and all that. That would be bad enough. According to these sources that talk to Politico, it's worse because the aide who says now he's definitely going to run for president again, as if that was ever in question, goes on to say, let's see, it's a witch hunt. It's going to anger his supporters. Aides say that his interest in the case pales in comparison to his obsession with the idea that he could still prove to be the winner of the 2020 election. His world is seriously consumed by that, said a Trump advisor. In comparison to election fraud, the DA's investigation is not even close. They say he's even questioned the merits of the Constitution if it can't be used to investigate election fraud. So it being a grift is sad. Him really believing that the Arizona cyber ninja thing is gonna make him president by August is so much sadder that I almost hope that the aides are just saying it to make him look bad. I don't wanna believe that a person could actually believe that. A grown adult who served in government as president could believe that, yeah, we're gonna cruise into Halloween with President Trump again. I don't know how you believe that, Adrienne. Any final thoughts?
I've always wondered, is Trump really just practicing like The Secret, where he thinks as long as I believe it, it's gonna come true? Because that's how I've rationalized it. I'm like, wow, he's got some strong game when it comes to The Secret. Like he's out here manifesting some stuff, because that has to be what's going on here. Otherwise, it's just not in any way logical.
Don't worry, Ivanka, I've got this. I'm putting a little cutout of Arizona on the vision board. It's all gonna come up Trumpy.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. In any event, outside of Trump's legal concerns, we've got the Supreme Court, which is coming out with a whole bunch of stuff, basically none of it good. And we'll be breaking that down after this. Okay, everybody, let's see what's going on out there in the audience. We had a super chat from Ray Turner, the bearded dragon, who said there is no justice, just us. Yeah, it has not been a good week for the justice system, Adrienne. It really has not. Like,
not at all.
And in the most substantive ways, cutting to the core of democracy, to the pop culture areas, to the social, cultural, economic, everything. And we'll be getting into a lot of it. Nicole said, yay, this must have been from yesterday because it says yay for John and JR Wednesday. So glad to have the distraction from the insane humidity here in Michigan. We're struggling after the flooding. There's flooding too? Jesus. I was just reading, I didn't get to it on the pre-show, but we've been referencing Lytton in Canada, which is a small town that was experiencing multiple record-setting days in a row of the hottest land temperature ever recorded in Canada. And then apparently a wildfire swept through it. And according to the reports I'm seeing, if anybody is from Lytton and can tell us, it's been devastated by wildfire. So it's been a week. It's been a week in the news. Anyway, Caroline Roberts says, I have a new job and I was watching training videos. Adrienne was featured. Now I know it's the right job.
That's true.
Awesome. You do training videos?
Yes, I do. I do them. I do diversity, inclusion, and also sexual harassment training videos that are featured by I think like the top Fortune 500 of companies. So it's funny.
Wow. Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. I've been in a few jobs where we watched videos like that, but it was a while back. It would have been so cool to see you. Maybe if TYT does a class or whatever, maybe we'll get to have some of you in it.
That'd be awesome.
Okay, Moondragon says, for Adrienne, I've heard that one of the arguments for statute of limitations is that hiding from the law is the crime. Is that even a valid argument when hiding is so easy?
Oh, well, if you're hiding from the law and you should be charged, generally they have the charges against you. And then, so it's always, so you've been charged. So the statute of limitations essentially tolls until they can come get you. Like what Roman Polanski, he's still hiding out, but if he were to come to the United States, he would be, he would be prosecuted. Yeah. So it's not so much an issue when you're running around. Sometimes there is an issue of if you, let's say you forget, which has been a big thing in the Catholic molestation situations in terms of it's in your subconscious, and then one day you finally realize I was molested. Then the statute of limitations says it'll start running from then, but it depends on the statute itself.
Okay, so there's a couple ways that it's not 100% set up to screw people over. A few ways.
Just a few.
A few, okay. Gay the Pray Away says, Adrienne and John, love you both. Celebrating the first day of legal weed in Connecticut.
Enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned that. So I'm from Connecticut. I was born and raised in Bridgeport. I I'm glad that you sent that in though, because I had heard that they'd legalized it, but I assumed it was like in some other states where it's like, we legalized it. In 18 months, maybe you'll be able to have some. I didn't realize it would so quickly turn around. Hey, maybe I'll visit my home state sometime now. Anyway, we'll see.
And I love how it's right before the July 4th weekend. That was intentional.
That's true. That was good timing there. Let's see. Key John over on Twitch says somehow cool news. A flying car completed a test flight between airports. It uses normal car fuel, not kerosene. Really? It was running on normal car fuel? Interesting. Okay, well, we'll see about that. I don't know that overbalances all the other bad news we've been getting, but I appreciate some interesting tech news there, so thank you. Brat Earlick subscribed on Twitch at tier 1. Thank you for that, and for dedicating your name to Mockingbird Ehrlich. I appreciate that. I can get behind that. Anyway, we got a lot of other news to get to, more comments in the future, but first this. Okay, Adrienne, let's check in with the Supreme Court. Are they awesome? Are they villains? I don't know. Let's find out together. The Supreme Court is closing out their session with a couple of rulings that are just awesome for democracy. We talked earlier this week about them picking up a couple different provisions of Arizona state law that had limited people's ability to, like get a little bit wrong about their ballot or potentially have someone else be involved in handing it in. We'll give you more details. That decision has now come down. 6-3, the Supreme Court is upholding the suppressive Arizona voting laws. That's awesome. It was the court's first consideration of how a crucial part of the Voting Rights Act of 1965 applies to voting restrictions that have a disproportionate impact on members of minority groups. The larger message of the ruling was that the Voting Rights Act, hobbled after the Supreme Court in 2013 effectively struck down its central provision, retains only limited power to combat voting restrictions said to disproportionately affect minority voters' access to the polls. This particular case, Brnovich versus the DNC, concerned two kinds of voting restrictions. One required election officials to discard ballots cast at the wrong precinct. Why? Because those people are not citizens or whatever? No, because it's just convenient to be able to get rid of them at that point. The other made it a crime for campaign workers, community activists, and most other people to collect ballots for delivery to polling places, a practice critics call ballot harvesting. The law made exceptions for family members, caregivers, and election officials. The people who are challenging the law say that both of these provisions disproportionately impact voters who aren't white, and that is not even really disputed by the Supreme Court. But what do you know? The super majority of conservatives on there don't seem that aggrieved by it. They don't seem to mind it so much. So Adrienne, take it away. How do you like your Supreme Court?
Oh, you know what? They're doing exactly what they're intended to do, which is really to suppress the vote and to continue to uphold the power structures. We have a majority conservative Supreme Court, and unless we expand it or do something, we're going to continue to see rulings like this. We've seen voting rights completely be under attack within this last year because, hey, people in power don't want to lose their power, predominantly white men. And so as a result of that, what they're doing is suppressing the vote of people of color, of women, of people who are in marginalized positions in society and have more hurdles to get their vote counted. And it really says to the fact that we are not a democracy, or to the extent we are a democracy exactly as it was intended to be originally, where it's white male landowners who have a right to vote and who have a say in this country.
Yeah, and I mean, we know why they initially passed them. We know why they chose these Supreme Court justices. We know why the justices are ruling in this way. It is all designed to produce an outcome, which is, I'm not gonna say like a thing that biases the system towards electing Republicans that's out of step with their actual approval out there, amongst the populace. It's just yet another one of those things. Let's just make it worse, but that's what they're doing. Back in 2016, Black, Latino, and Native American voters were about twice as likely to cast ballots in the wrong precinct as were white voters. And by the way, if you're a white conservative, bear in mind, they're totally cool with throwing out some of your ballots too. They don't give a damn about you so long as there's way more not yous that are being thrown out. So it's like when they'll go into an area and they'll make it so you need voter ID, but not like college ID. That doesn't do it. they know that they're gonna disenfranchise some young Republicans, those sad sacks. So they just know that they're gonna disenfranchise more not young Republicans. So you should be offended by this. You won't be, because I don't think you fundamentally care that much about democracy, but in theory you could be. At this point, I wanna ask you one other question, Adrienne, because there's other details about this, but my fear is that this is bad on its own, but it's also a signal that we're ending 6 months of multiple states trying to crack down on voting in as many ways as possible. Huge substantive ones, incredibly petty ones, everything they can do. This seems like a Supreme Court that is gonna be pretty deferential to these states' efforts to do this, especially when in this decision, they say that they don't even necessarily need to prove that it's done to combat voter fraud. They can just be scared of it whether it's happening or not, and they can do whatever they want effectively. I feel like they're gonna uphold a lot of these laws that are being challenged. Some already have been. The DOJ is gonna be looking to Georgia, but what's the point if the Supreme Court is just gonna uphold it anyway?
Exactly, and this just signaled it's an invitation to states to continue to promulgate these voting restrictions to essentially suppress the vote of marginalized groups so that white male dominance can continue to reign in our legislative process. And it's very unfortunate that this is the route SCOTUS is going. Also, it's like having this conservative bench up there with those 6 justices who really continue to push the Republican agenda. It is going to shape significantly, really, the demographics, the vote, the culture, everything about our nation. And so as much as people may think, oh, this decision doesn't affect me, as you kind of just indicated, the reality is that it's going to affect you down the line in your future. And so anybody who has any kind of democratic principles or progressive ideologies, they need to continue to fight, because what happens to us as Black people, as women, it will happen to you. We are the canaries in the coal mine. So when we scream about it, there's only a matter of time before it impacts you. So you might as well speak up now before it gets to that point.
You're 100% right. Yeah, and I mean, there's a reason they're doing it in the states they're doing it. They want to take those narrow victories that Biden had, flip those. They know that they're not gonna become more popular, like get more voters to support them. They just wanna make it so it doesn't matter. And if they can do that, and if they can win the Electoral College that way, well, then they haven't changed the laws in California or New York or whatever, but your vote no longer really counts if you can't win elections, because they've so manipulated and rigged the system in some states. So everyone should be engaged in this fight. Now that said, that was not the only thing the Supreme Court did. The Supreme Court also came out with a decision when it came to donor disclosure. This was yet another divided Supreme Court decision. They invalidated a California requirement that charities list the names and addresses of their top donors in filings with the state, saying the rule violates the Constitution's First Amendment. It was a, 6-3 ruling, a victory for 2 conservative groups, the Thomas More Law Center and the Charles Koch-backed Americans for Prosperity Foundation, that said the California rule puts their donors at risk of harassment and intimidation. If you don't know anything more, you might think, well, yeah, I mean, if you have to list their addresses, that could, no, it's just the state, it's not public. They're not giving it out to everyone. They say, well, yeah, but like in theory, it could be released at some point. That's our concern. We're just worried about the harassment. It's not that we want to make sure that people feel free to give us tons and tons of money to manipulate electoral outcomes and all that. We're just worried about the First Amendment and everything. So California says it keeps the information confidential, but that didn't matter to the Supreme Court, and they have invalidated it. And I believe they specifically did it for California, but there are other states that have similar sorts of requirements. In theory, I don't see how those stand if the Supreme Court has invalidated it in one state. So more good news from the Supreme Court, Adrienne.
Yep, and I remember when this case, SCOTUS decided to accept it, and I did an overruled episode on it in January. And the thing is, it's a Koch-backed effort, all the money in the world and pushing for dark money to continue to control our democracy. And that's exactly what happened here. And because we have this conservative majority court, this is just, it was a strike right up their alley, and they knocked it out of the park in terms of continuing to push the Republican agenda to the point where we're going to see so many more elections, Democrats and Republicans funded by dark money that are problematic. And that shouldn't be the case.
Yeah. And as we were talking about in the last one, that in theory, this signals an approach to election like suppression laws. This certainly seems to signal an approach towards disclosure. Disclosure, by the way, is supposed to be like, if you're worried about like the corrosive influence of money on politics, yeah, too bad. We're never gonna limit it, but we'll give you some disclosure. How about that? We'll let infinite money flood in, but maybe once every 20 years we'll pass a law that like mildly reveals a little bit of it. They're not even gonna do that anymore. They're gonna be knocking it down. You don't have to trust me. One of the dissenting justices, Sonia Sotomayor, said, today's analysis marks reporting and disclosure requirements with a bullseye. Regulated entities who wish to avoid their obligations can do so by vaguely waving towards First Amendment privacy concerns. Even when, again, there wasn't a privacy concern, the information was still private. But that was enough for the Supreme Court to get rid of disclosure. So if you can get rid of it when it comes to nonprofits in California, can't the same case be made for virtually every other form of disclosure? The fact that I can go on Open Secrets and I can find out who donated and how much and all that. Well, maybe they have to be worried about disclosure, or they have to be worried about privacy rights too. I don't know, maybe not. Maybe Kavanaugh will surprise me or whatever, and some others as well. But so far it looks like, it looks like disclosure is also going on the chopping block.
Yep, people do not want to actually have to face the consequences for their actions. They want to be able to say one thing to us and then secretly behind closed doors fund and funnel money to other entities and organizations that stand in absolute opposition to what the things that they're saying. So it's just more hypocrisy.
It is. Okay, let's see. We're going to take our next break a little bit early because this next story having to do with the undercover video of the Exxon executive is kind of a doozy. So we're gonna take a break, but stick around, important stuff after this. Okay, everyone, let's see. Okay, so really fast, I wanna respond to, I saw a super chat come in just a second ago from Graham who says, so glad that Adrienne agrees with my legal opinion about the Cosby case that was flippantly disregarded on last night's main show. The court is right. Well, okay, so as a person who was on last night's main show, we didn't flippantly disregard it. I said it might be that technically they're right or whatever, but we get to, my point was about all of these articles that are like, you guys, you need to understand that you need to balance the concerns of the blah, blah, blah. Why are you getting so mad? No, we get to be mad. We get to be mad about this entire situation because whether this is a particular case where they ruled correctly, it's not justice that we exist in. This is not justice. So I'm right there with you, Graham. I agree about that. I think that Adrienne's explanation was great, but this isn't justice. I'm not talking about the one narrow thing, I'm talking about the whole thing. But thank you, I appreciate your super chat, thank you. Okay, let's go over to Twitch. That has to be old. You know what? I'm actually starting to wonder, are we getting updates, Sophie? I'm not sure that we are on the Twitch one. Maybe we have. I don't know. Okay, well, we're gonna check into that. There's a little bit of chaos behind the scenes. Anyway, in Twitch, Melanie says, must-have voting kit includes chair, umbrella, food, snacks, water, drinks, book activity, small battery, solar-operated fan, noise-canceling earphones in case you want quiet, and mace. Yeah, at some point that's gonna be like the bare minimum necessary to engage with our election process because God forbid anyone give you any of that in line. Is the Supreme Court gonna uphold the like criminalizing handing out water? I feel like that had to have been added in just to stick it to us. They can't let that stay at least. So petty. Ugh. Anyway, Bonsai Tree Dragon subscribed for 3 months. Thank you for that. Boston Papink subscribed for 1. I also saw Ellinger hit 13 months. There's not a lot of people at 13 months over on Twitch. So I very much appreciate that, Ellinger. I believe that we've played on some of the game nights, so thank you for that. On Twitch, Whisper Mapit says, hi John, can you please give a birthday shout out to my best friend Kate, the LS Dragon? I introduced her to TYT this year, now she loves TDR and TYT as much as I do. Kate, happy birthday. Hope that it's a special day, considering all of what's going on out there. Anyway, okay, Dragonborn says, hashtag TDR live, first commandment, thou shalt have creepy basement with demonic graffiti. I assume that's a reference to our ongoing investigation of Brett Ehrlich. So I can't confirm or deny just yet. So we will look into it. Graham sent a follow-up super chat saying, "Don't worry, I still love the show. Have another $2." Thank you, Graham. I don't have a problem with you. You're the best. And I love, you know what I love? Honest criticism. That's good. That's good. Honest criticism. Graham was not criticizing us to get people to subscribe to his Substack or whatever. So that's good. Thank you, Graham. Okay, now even the old stuff in the doc has been erased. So I'm left with basically nothing. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but anyway. Let's see, Roy Dunn says, could the food and water provision be because it's a form of bribery or seen that way? Look, so I'm assuming that we're a group to say, I will give you the water if you vote this way. That's electioneering. I don't think that something like that is legal anyway. You can't do that sort of partisan stuff. But you would have to make the case that's being done. And I don't believe that anything like that case has actually been made. Anyway, we'll see. It'll get to the Supreme Court eventually. That said, big news coming up. We'll see you after this. Okay, let's jump into one of the spiciest stories we've got on the rundown for today. Good bit of video coming up, but it's important stuff. So Adrienne, let's jump into this. Exxon Mobil loves behind the scenes to manipulate things, but what about when those behind the scenes moments are no longer behind the scenes? Greenpeace UK's investigative platform Unearth posed as headhunters to obtain information from one of ExxonMobil's most senior Washington lobbyists. So this is Keith McCoy, senior ExxonMobil lobbyist on Capitol Hill, has represented the company with the Congress for 8 years and is talking shockingly openly and freely with these headhunters. So we got a lot of different stuff that he's going to reveal about ExxonMobil, reveal about US senators, reveal about the way they use narratives to try to ward off substantive change. So we got a few videos. Let's jump into this first one.
Did we aggressively fight against some of the science? Yes. Did we join some of these shadow groups to work against some of the early efforts? Yes, that's true. But there's nothing illegal about that. We were looking out for our investments. We were looking out for our shareholders.
Okay, so what he says there, Adrienne, seems perfectly accurate. The sort of lobbying that he's saying there, the shady behind the scenes organizations, the openly denying science, even knowing that the denial of that could influence politics that results in destruction of property, people dying and all that, is very much not illegal in America, which seems like the point. And it seems like kind of the problem. We've got more video, but what did you think about that first little taste?
I agree with you in terms of it not being illegal in the United States, but also being a problem. When we have contracts with one another, there is an implied duty on both people's behalf to use their best efforts, to operate in good faith. And that's something that's read into every contract, whether it's there or not. So it's not like the law in some way can't see the fact that we expect people to act good. And the thing is, it's like with ExxonMobil, just because there was no law expressly banning it, there should be an implicit law that says you need not do shady things so that you can continue to financially benefit. But then again, I don't think that anyone's really going to enforce that.
Yeah, and the thing is, like the way he describes it is just, well, we have to look out for our interests. So, we're gonna like deny a little science or whatever. And the thing is, like, so they're selling a product. Basically, everyone who sells products lies about them. Like they lie about the effect that it's gonna have. They lie about how good it is or whatever. The issue is that some products are more consequential than others. And one of the chief ways that we generate and consume energy is quite consequential, we are finding out. I mean, the heat dome right now of the Pacific Northwest, it's like something like more than 500 unexpected deaths just in the last week. Pretty consequential to them, the result of some of this long-term heating of the globe. But they just have to look after their interests. And the issue is not so much their private stuff or even just their lying ads and stuff like that. It's that they have a fairly direct influence on politics. And one of the ways they do that is through their access to politicians which he's going to talk about in this next video.
When you have an opportunity to talk to a member of Congress, I liken it to fishing, right? You have bait, you throw that bait out. It's all these opportunities that you use, and to use the fishing analogy again, just to kind of reel them in. We've got this issue. We need Congressman so-and-so to be able to either introduce this bill. We need him to make a floor statement. We need him to send a letter. Yeah. You name it. We've asked for everything. Joe Manchin, I talk to his office every week. He is the kingmaker, and he's not shy about sort of staking his claim early and completely changing the debate.
Legal declarations show that Senator Manchin has received tens of thousands of dollars from ExxonMobil and its trade associations. Keith McCoy names 10 other senators as crucial to ExxonMobil. Senators Mark Kelly, Chris Coons, Shelley Moore Capito, Kirsten Sinema, John Tester, Maggie Hassan, John Barrasso, Steve Daines, John Cornyn, and Marco Rubio. All bar Kelly and Hassan have taken money from Exxon totaling $117,000.
Which, as we always need to in these cases, let's just point out, they are bought for the most pathetic sums of money imaginable. Considering how much they spend, those are senators. It's not state legislators or something. You can buy them so cheap. And that's Kirsten Sinema. Wasn't she in the Green Party back in the day? Mm-hmm. She's supposed to be she's a progressive. She just disagrees with some of us. So there, look, Manchin apparently is one of the worst. He says he talks to him constantly. He's gotten like $12,000. And that is apparently all it takes for weekly. Do you get to talk to a senator every week? Anybody watching this get to call up a senator? Apparently it isn't that expensive. Or maybe it's that it's not about the donations necessarily, it's about future opportunities. If Manchin ever wants to leave, or if he needs family members to get a job, far more than $12,000 could be on the line for some of these people. Adrienne?
Absolutely, yep, there are board positions waiting. You know what, it's so incredible how corrupt our system is, yet how much we legitimize the corruption of saying, oh no, that's how you're supposed to do it. When really it's effectively a form of bribery. And it's not in any way helpful toward democracy, yet people continue to uplift it. This system is just entirely whack.
100%, and one of the things that's frustrating me is, this was a good sized story, right? Like people talked about this. I don't know about on like CNN or MSNBC or whatever. I don't know. Wouldn't you think Fox would be all, look at this? It's a Democrat is dealing, but they don't want to rock the boat when this comes up. First of all, there were some Republicans that were on that list, and all of them are doing it for some industries. This should be like the big story of the month. This and legitimately the Cosby thing, because that's appalling in every way imaginable. He's just admitting it. He's just saying it. He's got that access, and we know how consequential it is. We know the result of it, and he's admitting all of it. And it's not gonna matter. It's gonna be forgotten in a couple of days. Joe Manchin maybe will get a question about it. Maybe at one point a journalist, I don't know who, I doubt Tapper will bring it up. Honestly, it'll probably be Chris Wallace, if anyone at this point, will bring it up, and that'll be it. That won't be it for the relationship. He'll still be taking those weekly calls, and it'll still have an effect on legislation that's currently pending. But Jesus. And that I want to turn to that now. So this video that's been revealed of the Exxon lobbyist isn't just about what they've done in the past, the decades of denying the science and all of that. It's also about the future, dealing with the fact that Joe Biden has made some promises when it comes to climate change. So let's talk about that. He addresses it in the video.
Exxon was also fighting to strip out spending on climate. Forget that, it lobbied. Stick to roads and bridges.
So that's a completely different conversation. When you start to stick to roads and bridges, and instead of a $2 trillion bill, it's an $800 billion bill. If you lower that threshold, you stick to highways and bridges, then a lot of the negative stuff starts to come out. Why would you put in something on emissions reductions on climate change to oil refineries in a highway bill? So, and people say, yeah, that doesn't make any sense. So then you get to the germaneness and say that shouldn't be in this bill.
Okay, so yeah, and by the way, what was the conversation when the bill was initially talked about, when we found out what was going to be in it? It was about, this isn't about physical infrastructure, it should be more specific and all that. And that was largely driven by right wingers, but that was a narrative. And remember, it's not like they're just giving to Sinema and Manchin, they're giving to basically all the Republicans too. So this is how it's done. Biden makes some promises, he maybe even puts out an initial outline of what the bill is gonna look like that might include some of that stuff. And then the lobbyists get involved because they have infinitely more access, more financial influence over this process because of all of that fishing that they've done over the years, using bait, which means bribes, legalized bribes. That's all it means. And apparently he thinks at least that it's working when it comes to what's gonna be one of the biggest pieces of legislation in this presidential term.
Yep, and I don't doubt that at all, and especially it's just so incredibly important to hold these people accountable for all the things going on, with Canada right now and their heat. They just reported 486 deaths in, I believe, the Great Britain area. Like there are issues. Exxon was just fined 14.25 million by a Texas federal judge for violating the Clean Air Act. Like these things need to be addressed, because the reality is that we are going to suffer as individuals while they continue to pocket money. And we can't allow that to happen because it's our future, it's the environment, it's not something we can necessarily get back.
Yeah, 100%. One last aspect I want to talk about this is about a carbon tax. So generally one of the things that these companies will do is they will delay as long as possible. They'll spend decades fighting the science and all that, trying to deny it. And then they'll come up with some stuff that they find to be acceptable and preferable to actually dealing with the problem. So they say that they're supportive of a carbon tax and all that. In 2018, they touted their investment of $1 million over 2 years into a carbon tax advocacy campaign in Congress. That was 1 million over 2 years. By comparison, their annual lobbying budget is $12 million. So they care about lobbying 24 times as much. But anyway, the final comments we're gonna see from Keith McCoy has to do with the carbon tax, so here it goes.
Nobody is going to propose a tax on all Americans. And the cynical side of me says, yeah, we kind of know that. But it gives us a talking point that we can say, well, what is ExxonMobil for? Well, we're for a carbon tax.
And why? Because they're confident it'll never happen in America.
No, it's not gonna, a carbon tax isn't gonna happen. And the bottom line is it's going to take political courage, political will, in order to get something done. And that doesn't exist in politics, it just doesn't.
I wonder why. I wonder why that doesn't exist when you have people like that laughing about how they throw up things like a carbon tax that they know isn't gonna happen and they don't want to happen to ward off other changes. And it's not just lobbyists like him, politicians do the same thing talking about it. Now, really fast, he put out a statement after this saying, I am deeply embarrassed by my comments and that I allowed myself to fall for Greenpeace's deception. Dude, you were like so enthusiastic. How cool did you think you were on that call? My statements clearly do not represent ExxonMobil's positions on important public policy issues. While some of my comments were taken out of context, there is no excuse for what I said or how I said it. I apologize to all my colleagues at the company and my friends in Washington, D.C., all of whom have a right to expect better of me. Like this is some sort of moral failing. He's describing what they actually do.
Telling the truth is a moral failing for them. Like this is something that they're just like, wow, I can't believe you did that. I think that the only redeeming quality is that he did these things in hope and in furtherance of getting money, of getting a really great job or something somewhere. So, but yeah, telling the truth, totally not a redeeming quality.
And he'll be fine. He'll be fine, and we'll all move on and we'll forget about it because he accidentally revealed the truth.
And I love too that Exxon made $181.5 billion in 2020.
That's amazing.
2020 when we all suffered. Yeah, good times.
Good times, not for the earth. Yeah. Okay, we only have a few more minutes. I want to fit in one more story until we have to end the hour. So let's jump into this. Sorry for the director. I know that was abrupt. More bad news out of the legal system, this time for Britney Spears, with a judge denying her request to remove her father as conservator of her estate. The decision did come just 1 week after her testimony about Jamie Spears' role as conservator. But Judge Brenda Penny's ruling was apparently not a result of that hearing in particular, and was instead made on a request from last November, in which Spears' attorney filed to add Bessemer Trust to serve as co-conservator alongside the singer's father. CNN reported Tuesday that 2 sources close to the singer said her attorney is planning to file a petition to terminate the nearly 13-year conservatorship. So it's confusing because it certainly seems like it's coming so on the heels of the testimony that it's a direct response to that. Apparently it's not. I wonder though if it's a bad sign for the future for her ability to get out of this entirely, which is certainly the goal. What do you think?
No, I think it's okay. If this ruling, as the court said, is based on a previous application, that's not necessarily a bad sign, since now she has evidence, the judge has evidence that could warrant going ahead and terminating that conservatorship. But that evidence was not available when that particular petition came before the judge. So I'd like to think we still have some hope here.
Okay, that's interesting. Look at that. Well, we're not gonna go through all of what she said in that. We've got a video up on the channel that you should certainly go watch, because some of what she revealed is absolutely horrific. But she did say, I truly believe this conservatorship is abusive. I just want my life back. It's been 13 years, and it's enough. And look, this is not necessarily a story that I've gotten personally invested in on the show over the past few years all that much. Generally, this is like when she's actually come out and talked about it. But it was surprising to me that there was virtually anyone who opposed her push over the past few weeks. And there were people managed to find a reason to believe that she's too crazy, she can't take care of herself or whatever. She should just spend the rest of her life dealing with this. And there were some people that were actually pushing for that. Any last thoughts?
I think it's unfortunate that essentially she's been exploited the way she has, and that she can't even control her own body. It's absolutely wrong. I think it speaks to kind of an underlying issue in our society, or not even necessarily underlying, in terms of how women are oppressed and subjugated. And the fact that her father is able to make money and capitalize on her to this very day, it's not cool.
Yeah, and what you're referencing there, I believe, is her talking about how she wants to have another kid, but they're effectively not letting her. That's madness. How, like, she is a fully grown woman. How do they have any control over all of that? And it's not even like they're just protecting her, cloistering her away from. They're exploiting her financially every day. It's insane.
She's pushing 40. It's like, so what if she wanted to go spend all of her money? It's like, yeah, let her do what she wants to do. It's her money.
Yeah. If I want to go and buy s'mores with every dollar I have, I get to do that. It's a bad idea, and I'll face the repercussions for my wife, but I can do that in theory. She's a grown person. Hashtag free Britney. Anyway, that is all the time we're gonna have with our first linear. Thank you to the linear audience. We appreciate you regardless of what platform you're on, but there is more news coming. So if you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching on Twitch, a lot more. Up first, we got Meghan McCain leaving The View after this. Welcome back, everyone. Hello, Twitch and YouTube. We've got some more news for you. But before we jump into that news, in particular, maybe even some breaking news that Adrienne just clued me into, I want to read a few of your comments. Genocide had a question about one of those Exxon videos. It was WTF was that super quick gunshot. I believe that was a shot from one of Manchin's ads. Because like a Republican, he does ads where he just holds an assault rifle for some reason. What would you think if you saw that in a different country? But apparently it's different if you're a Southern conservative white male. I don't know. Stray X says her father makes 10K a week off of her. Speaking about Britney, I don't know the amount, but I'm assuming it's a lot of money and it is clearly biasing this process. Coupe de Jarnac says, does this mean The View might be watchable? Probably not. Well, that's getting to something we're gonna talk about in just a second. Tell me what to put responded to that list of the senators saying, there's the bipartisanship Joe Manchin is truly in favor of. That is true. There were Republicans and Democrats both getting Exxon money. Tell me what to put also said, went to go see Francesca's comedy show yesterday in West Hollywood. It was funny. I got to see a lot of other great comedians as well. That's awesome. Look at nature healing when it comes to comedy. And finally, I saw a YouTube comment from Tim Robinson who says, sorry to say, Johnny Pie, but Rashad Ritchie's show is the best show on TYT currently. You don't have to apologize. Do you know how happy it would make me if there were a ton of people that love that show more than any other show, any other news show? That would be so good. Rashad's awesome. That's why we brought him on the show over and over and over again. So I'm super excited for the show. Love that Adrienne has been co-hosting the show a bunch. People seem to really like it. I hope that it lasts forever. Brooke says, get wrecked, John. He wrecked me. No, it's awesome. I want our network to grow. I want us to bring in awesome people and highlight them. And Generator, happy birthday. I saw your post before. Happy birthday. Kathy McIntyre upgraded their membership to tier 3. Thank you so much. We recently did our monthly live Q&A. You have access to that as well as all the past ones. So hope that you enjoy that and you can take part in some in the near future. Now that said, Adrienne, why don't we jump back into the news? I believe we're gonna be starting off with this video actually.
I'm just eternally grateful to have had this opportunity here. So seriously, thank you from the absolute bottom of my heart. And I will still be here another month. So if you guys want to fight a little bit more, we have 4 more weeks.
So that is Meghan McCain responding on the show this morning to news that broke this morning, which is that she is leaving The View after nearly 4 years on the ABC daytime show. Her last day will be at the end of the show's season later this summer. Why are we covering this? Well, The View is, for better or for worse, let's do a poll. Like the biggest news show that's not Fox and Friends, we've decided that this is going to be the most important thing in political discussion, and I guess it is. So she has been a big part of it for close to half a decade, and she's now going to be transitioning away after serving as the second longest running conservative co-host on the program, following Elizabeth Hasselbeck, who was on for 10 years. So it's not a close second necessarily, but she's gonna be leaving, Adrienne. What do you think?
Well, I think this is an upgrade. For the past 4 years, she has been essentially weaponizing and issuing these Karen-esque and Karen-adjacent commentary. And the fact is that because she's on the View and so many people watch it, she gets a lot of attention and continues to essentially promulgate this ideology that is problematic for our nation. And so seeing her go away would be awesome. But of course, I'm sure she's not necessarily going to go away, but at least she will not be on the ABC network and The View, reaching all sorts of housewives across the nation.
I agree. I think 2 of the easiest predictions are 1, she's doing this because she has a different show lined up. I don't know who would be giving it to her, but I'm sure they are. And 2, either she will claim, or at the very least, some will claim that she's been canceled, even though she's saying she's choosing to leave. And the reason she's doing it, she doesn't want to move back to New York City because she went to DC during the pandemic to live with her husband, who's a Fox News guy, Ben Dominic, who's utter trash. Like he is the worst, but they're a happy couple or whatever, which says all you need to know. She was not canceled. She was not pushed out. She should have been because she's the worst, but she wasn't. They're still gonna claim that they actually were. So look, I thought about like pulling like her worst comments, her worst quotes. The thing is, it's virtually everything. She is fundamentally above all else, like as Adrienne pointed out, She's very much a form of a Karen. That is definitely true. She's entitled based on her family history. She's so sure of herself without the experience or the knowledge to justify it. She's just fiercely ignorant and very happy about it. And I don't want to play a bunch of those, but I do want to play one. This is something we showed, I guess it was like a month or two ago, and I thought it was funny. And it had to do with the split, the royal split with Meghan Markle and the royal family. I just love this video. So this is how we're gonna send her away.
The American experiment is the way to go. And if we have two American women, Meghan Markle and Oprah Winfrey, who are single-handedly finishing what George Washington and our revolutionary counterparts did, I'm all for it.
Okay.
I just love that. Like, I don't agree with Whoopi on a lot politically anymore, but yeah, that was a good response to that, I thought.
Yeah, it's like, what can you say? The fact that this woman is trying to analogize Oprah and Meghan Markle with George Washington, get out of here. Like, it just, man, she does represent a demographic though. There's no question. Meghan McCain's are out there. They are alive and well. I know a few of them, and God help us.
Yeah. And I will throw out, I have one or two more comments to say about her. But first of all, we did a little bit of reading from Variety, which covered this. So they talked about her this way. McCain has described herself as a Republican with liberal views on many social issues. Okay, maybe that's debatable. She is a fierce advocate for the LGBTQ plus community. I'll leave it to them to decide whether she is or not. But they say, and has recently dedicated much of her airtime to the staggering rise in anti-Semitism around the globe as one of the few mainstream media figures to prioritize the topic. And no offense to the writer from Variety, I don't know this person, but what the hell, seriously? That's how you describe. Adrienne, feel free.
No, that sold their soul. Like, that was some, Meghan's PR agent wrote that, because God help, that's just no.
Yeah. First of all, it's not dead, it's like prioritizing it by trying to claim that any comment you don't like is anti-Semitic. And in particular, when it's a woman of color that says it, just weirdly, she always thinks that what they say is anti-Semitic. And then literally on the show, like 2 weeks ago, was when Marjorie Greene said that the vaccine thing is the same as the yellow star. It's like the Holocaust. She was like, this isn't worth commenting on. Why are we talking about this? That a congresswoman pretended that people getting the vaccine is like the Holocaust. To her, this vigorous defender against anti-Semitism didn't think that was worth talking about in the hot topics portion of The View. But no, forget about all that. Fierce advocate, that's how she should be remembered. No, how she should be remembered is she was an ignorant person. That's why she was on the show. It got great ratings or whatever. That's why. It didn't get great ratings because she was such a great example of conservative intellectualism that she brought in a bunch of conservatives. Has anyone ever claimed that more conservatives watch the show because they just want to see her provide a vigorous defense of conservatism? No, she was brought on to give dumb points, a really stupid version of republicanism that doesn't like Trump, which they appreciated, so that libs could watch it and watch her make a fool out of herself. That's all it is. And look, to some extent, I feel a little bit bad for her, but she's being paid very well for it. That is what it was. She needs to accept that. And wherever she's being brought in, if it's not to fill that role, it's not gonna work. You can't have her do a serious conservative show. Nobody wants that. There's no market for that. It is just for her to get dunked on by Behar and by Whoopi and stuff like that. There was a market for that, and she's now opting out of it.
Well, see, I actually think that there is entirely a market for her because a lot of these Republican pundits, what they do is just pull their idea of facts out of midair or out of a different orifice. And they purport that they're truth. And so she does that extremely well. It's just she clearly really doesn't actually know the underlying facts. So she isn't lying to herself as much as she's just making things up. And so, I think that is where her intellectual rigor doesn't necessarily match up with other pundits. But gosh, I think she may do just fine out there.
But she is anti-Trump. Like I don't disagree with you that the average pundit is really stupid. Sean Hannity is a legitimately stupid person. I think that the people claiming that Tucker Carlson is like super clever, savvy, like no, I guess he got that it was time to be explicitly white supremacist. That like in the past it had been difficult, so he's got that savvy. But I don't think that she gives a particularly good version of those points, and she's anti-Trump on top of it, which is gonna, I think, hurt her quite a bit with most Republicans. I don't know. Final question to you. Who do you think should replace her? Do you have any preference?
Yikes. I don't necessarily have any preference, but I wouldn't be surprised if the individual is white and blonde because they want to hit on demographics and the visual is very important. I don't find ABC necessarily to be that truly diverse of a network. And so I know whoever they're gonna put there, it's gonna be for ratings, not necessarily ideologies.
I think that is certainly the case. Yeah. Okay, let's mix it up and let's go to total nonsense for just a little bit. Earlier in the show, we discussed the fact that at last night's Trump town hall, Sean Hannity, who you're seeing pictured there, didn't think it was worth a minute to ask the former president about the fact that his organization is facing impending legal charges. So they didn't talk about it. I'm sure he would do the same if it was any other politician. What they did talk about though was Sean Hannity's desire for Joe Biden to face new medical procedures, as you'll see.
By the way, Ronnie, would you mind giving Joe a cognitive test? President Sippy Cup, I don't know how well he's gonna do, but I won't get you in trouble with these comments.
We aced it. I think I can say that I aced it.
Did he get one? He didn't get one question wrong, did he? 30 out of 30. Yeah. Wow.
And they did get a little more difficult after you got by 15, I would say. But
I heard the first 3 questions are: is it a giraffe or an elephant? Right?
Well, that's what the fake news does. They take the first 2 or 3 questions and they put them in. But let me tell you, they would not get those last 15 right. Certainly not the last 10. That I can tell you.
Jesus. So a couple things. One, yes, he is still 3 years later bragging about completing a test that is designed to detect if your brain is about to leak out of your ears. He's still bragging about that. And that's sad, but really fast. Sean Hannity is also kind of bragging about it. 30 out of 30, wow. It's North Korea stuff right there. The bootlicking that he's doing to Donald Trump right there. Even though he then goes on to say that the questions are like, is this a giraffe or whatever? He still has to, like kowtow to Trump and make him feel good about the fact that he passed this test that literally anyone could.
My God, these are such bottom feeders. Like the bar is so incredibly low. And the fact that people are celebrating and they're so excited about this, you know what? It really shows how some people get passes in society where they really don't have to measure up. Whereas other people have to show that they are 10 times better and that they know the Constitution verbatim. It's so sad and so much of a representation of our society and the inequities in it.
It's so stupid. I understand. I'm the fake news. So we only focus on the first 3 questions, which you just said. Well, I'm gonna do what we've done before, which is remind people that no, it is not that the first 3 are easy and the rest are hard. Just briefly, we're gonna show it to you again. The Montreal Cognitive Assessment, let's bring it up. You can see there, drawing a clock, identifying a rhino, putting letters in order, copying a cube that's in front of your face. That's the first half. I guess that's what he would describe as the easy half. Okay, so then you move on to the second half. It's again, and we're gonna get to the video, repeating a list of words that have been said at you, subtracting 7 from numbers that are written down, by the way. Subtract 7 from this number and then subtract 7 from that. That's very hard. There's some basic language questions. What's the similarity between a banana and an orange? What day is it? He said the last ones, they'll never get the last 10. Well, the last 6 are, what city are you in, buddy? What day is it? I don't think that I'm so genius level intelligent that that's just easy for me. I think you could handle it too. But no, he's still bragging. He's still bragging after years of bragging. And I am seeing the comments asking for it. So we're gonna go to the video. One of the lowest points, I think, in humanity's history. This isn't even about Trump anymore. We produced this guy socially. Take a look at this defense of his mind, his great intellect.
It was 30 or 35 questions. The first questions are very easy. The last questions are much more difficult. Like a memory question, it's like you'll go person, woman, man, camera, TV. So they say, could you repeat that? So I said, yeah. So it's person, woman, man, camera, TV. Okay, that's very good. If you get it in order, you get extra points. Okay, now he's asking you other questions, and then 10 minutes, 15, 20 minutes later, they say, remember the first question? Not the first, but the 10th question? Give us that again. Can you do that again? And you go person, woman, man, camera, TV. If you get it in order, you get extra points. They said nobody gets it in order. It's actually not that easy, but for me it was easy. Person, woman, man, camera, TV. They say, that's amazing. How did you do that? I do it because I have like a good memory, because I'm cognitively there.
I still don't believe that that's real. I think that our editors made that up. No person, no president could have actually said that and had a doctor like solemn on him. That is amazing. No one could have done that. That's the saddest thing, Adrienne, I've ever seen in my life. Acknowledging that the joke is mostly on us because he got to be president for 4 years, and as a result of it, hundreds of thousands of people needlessly died.
Seriously, and I do appreciate celebrating the small wins, but this is a little excessive. The thing that also kind of gets me is the ableism in this all, because, for example, being on the autism spectrum, I have a poor working memory. So when I get pulled over by police, I let them know immediately, because I may only hear, put your hands on the steering wheel. I don't also hear, turn off the ignition. So it's like having to memorize things on the spot like that and repeat them. I may not be able to do it, but that damn sure doesn't mean I lack intelligence. So all watching this, it is annoying, but at the same time, it just reminds me of the ableism in our society and the fact that everybody's minds work differently. And clearly, I don't think Trump's mind works at all.
Well, I'm very glad that you said that. I didn't even know that was a part of being on the spectrum. So thank you. I've learned that. You're totally right. And there's sort of a version of that led to that conversation in the town hall. In that, if Biden stutters for a second, stumbles for a second, they pitch that as him having dementia, when they know that he stuttered for years and struggled to get over it. Yeah. They know that, and they just pretend that that's not true. They conflate this test, which is supposed to be able to detect some of the early signs of dementia and things like it, with an IQ test. He said that it shows he's intelligent to be able to copy the cube or point at the elephant or whatever. So I'm glad that you added that important extra context. God, the country we live in, absolute madness. Anyway, you know what? Here's what we're gonna do. We have a few minutes left. You brought up a little bit of breaking news. I find it to be quite interesting. So we're gonna go to a little conversation about that rather than our pre-prepared material. So let's launch into that. Donald Trump isn't on Twitter, you know that. He's also not on things like Parler. In our pre-show today, we talked about that. He was offered a position on Parler, 40% of their revenue, and declined it because they refused to ban anyone who criticizes him. He would only join it if they canceled everyone who was mean to him. Bear that in mind as we talk about this breaking news. The fact that his team has launched a new social media platform called Getter, which obviously sounds like Twitter because it's just copying Twitter. It's just going to be a sad right-wing Twitter. Let's see, it's a non-bias social network for people all over the world. I don't understand why no one can say non-biased. I don't understand it, but that's what they say on the App Store. It's rated M for mature, meaning it's recommended for users 17 and older. And I don't know exactly why. I will say that in the promotional materials I saw, all of the profiles that were shown were very attractive young women. You know what you think of when you think of a Trump rally attendee or whatever. No, it's designed to get young white conservatives to sign up for Getter, thinking that there's all these young, attractive women that just want to talk about the Second Amendment or COVID being a bioweapon. I don't know. But so supposedly that's starting up. It's gonna try to compete with Twitter. Adrienne, what do you think?
Well, I do love how essentially they're using all these photos of attractive young women because essentially they're trying to lure in all of these incels, and it's really going to end up being just a big online social media sausage factory of hate. And so it's kind of like, great, if you want to go full depth 4chan but put a Trump on it, sure, that sounds like a good way to go. I do not think it's going to rival Twitter in any way. I wouldn't be surprised if it gets dropped by Apple and other outlets such as Parler did. But it's like Trump is going to Trump. He really is.
Yeah, look, so they're saying it's going to fight cancel culture. Again, stupid narrative. They love canceling people. Gwen Berry literally has to be taken out of the Olympics because she turned her back on a flag. These are the people that hate cancel culture. Okay, so it defends free speech, stops cancel culture, creates a true marketplace of ideas. Okay, so Parler, which was designed to do literally the exact same thing, rampantly banned leftists, like trying to clear it out because the right wingers couldn't take it. They say they want it to be an opening marketplace of ideas. They don't. They want it to be a safe space for right-wing ideas. That's all they want. And eventually they had to start banning people who were advocating for violence and crimes and terrorism. So when that happens on Getter, which it definitely is going to, because that's who they're trying to appeal to, what are they gonna do? Are they going to cancel those accounts, or are they gonna leave them in and likely, like Parler, as Adrienne pointed out, get pulled from app stores? Getter, you better prepare for this because it's only like a month away. If you're actually lucky enough to get people to sign on, and if this doesn't get immediately canceled like Trump's blog was, you're going to have that issue. So what are you going to do when people are spreading COVID misinformation and they're advocating for the murder of their political rivals? Are you gonna leave those accounts up or not? Adrienne, what path do you think they're gonna take?
Oh, I think they're probably going to leave the accounts up and try to fight it in some way. I do think that this is essentially going to create a new department in like the FBI. So they're going to have to be monitoring everything that goes on here. That it's just going to be a conglomeration of hate speech and all sorts of things that threaten our nation. So I can't see it being alive for very long. But you never know. Maybe the government will let it stay up because it's like, hey, at least we know where they are and they're all in one place.
That's true. It is convenient, as Parler proved to be. By the way, Ham Salad Dragon says, I'm gonna start a coffee review app called Jitter. That's good. See, I like that. I would go to that one. Anyway, we are unfortunately running out of time. So I want to thank you, Adrienne, for joining us. It's always a pleasure having you on the show. Today, it was even more necessary than usual to have your expertise. So thank you for giving us your time. I do appreciate that.
Thank you.
And where can people watch more of your work?
TYT Overruled on the Rebel headquarters pages on Facebook and YouTube, as well as catch me on Twitter at Adrienne Law and on Instagram at Adrienne Lawrence.
And definitely follow Adrienne on Twitter because there's so much happening in the Supreme Court, stuff coming out from courts. It's very helpful to me, Adrienne, to see your real-time analysis of it as you're like learning more, and it's very helpful. So I advise everyone to follow you. And thank you again. For those of you at home, thank you for watching. Do appreciate that. We've got an awesome interview coming up that'll be up on the channel a little bit later on today. Also want to remind you, tomorrow is garbage day. So I'm gonna be joined by Jeff Waldorf, who's gonna be helping me throw out some garbage. You can get involved in that process by going to the community tab of our YouTube channel and voting for the community garbage person of the day, which should be a lot of fun. So definitely go do that. And until next time, until I see you then. Stay safe out there, stay sane out there, and I'll see you soon.
You know what time it is. Welcome to Indisputable. I'm your host, Rashad Ritchie. We have a lot on the agenda today. Let me give a big thank you to everyone who continues to subscribe to the YouTube channel. We set a goal for 100,000. We thought it would take months. It took 3 weeks. We exceeded 100,000 subscribers last Friday. We're now at 112,000 subscribers for this show. And last week we had over 2 million views because of you, all right? Because of you. And I want to say thank you for that. Today on the show, my co-host will be my dear sister, Malika Jabali, senior news and politics editor at Essence. This is going to be an amazing show. Also, I got Dr. Pamela Gurley, author and social activist, to talk about her book, I'm Not a Stereotype. We're going to get into some other issues in relationship to that book as well. And the bullpen, my debate guest will be Carrie Sheffield, senior fellow at Independent Women's Forum. And my wish a Karen would is a hell of a one. Let's get into my top story. Violence in Paterson, New Jersey. No, not by citizens, but by the police. A narrow apartment building. There's an officer having a back and forth with a young African-American male about him seeing his child. He's on his cell phone and he's talking aggressively on his cell phone, but he's not threatening anyone. He simply wants to see his children, according to the narrative. Well, this one police officer, he's being reasonable. He's trying to de-escalate, utilizing the training that he was given in situations like this. And then another cop shows up and decides to simply assault this black male. 44-year-old Spencer Finch has been with the department for 18 years. And his salary, ladies and gentlemen, is $106,736 a year. That's according to city records. According to Paterson Press, for more than 2 minutes, the officer, whose name has not been made public, stayed away from the agitated man, seemingly employing de-escalation techniques that were supposed to prevent physical confrontations between cops and citizens. But in a matter of moments, the tense situation erupted in violence. A scuffle, seemingly initiated by another police officer at the scene, who hit the father and later kneed the man in the face while he was sitting on the floor. Now, we know the identity of that cop. The reason why we know who this cop is because the mayor ordered the release of this footage. The mayor of the city said this was in an effort to remain transparent. About 2 weeks after the incident, the authorities arrested the other cop, 44-year-old Spencer Finch, an 18-year veteran with the police department, and charged him with assault, official misconduct, and trying to conceal his actions by filing a false police report. Well, you don't say. Here's some of that video.
Are you a father?
No, but
you're not a father. You don't understand, my nigga. Third time. This is the third time my kids have been taken from me.
It was a domestic disturbance report.
Yelling in the hole.
And that was Paterson, New Jersey police officer Spencer Finch.
Yelling in the hole.
Get the fuck out of here. Put your fucking hands on me.
Listen, we gave you a fucking chance, bro.
I gave him a chance to put his hands on me. I gave him a chance to put his hands on me.
We told you to chill out so we can solve the problem. That's it.
You didn't record him, hit me.
Please stop.
That's some bitch ass shit, bro. That's some bitch ass shit, my nigga.
Stop resisting, Brandon.
I'm not resisting, yo.
Just relax, please.
That's some bitch ass shit, yo.
Brandon, please relax.
Yo, you saw him punch me in my shit.
Turn around.
Relax.
You saw him punch me in my shit, dog.
With the man in handcuffs, Finch did this.
Look me in my eye, little nigga.
No, please stop.
Spencer Finch has now been suspended without pay and charged with 4 felonies: assault, possession of a weapon for an unlawful purpose, misconduct, and filing a false police report.
Now, who's the real criminal here? You see clearly one officer utilizing his training, trying to de-escalate. This is not a criminal issue. This was not even a criminal call. It was a civil dispute about children and custody and visitation, which could have easily been handled, except for the fact that this cop decided to be the thug that he is. Now, Patterson police, they have been in the spotlight for a while now because of police misconduct. Well, initially the authorities of this city said, well, this is because we have young officers. Well, these young officers have been on record for violating the constitutional rights of other people. They have been suspended, they have been fired, some of them have been charged. Well, you can't make the argument that this is just a young cop. This guy has been on the force for 18 years and he makes over $100,000 a year. And he is such a criminal that responding to a domestic civil dispute, he decides to act in a way that is criminal against an unarmed father with a cell phone in his hand. To talk about this story and a lot more, I got my dear sister, Jabali. Good day. Thank you for being on Indisputable.
Hi, Dr. Ritchie. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. Tell me how you see this scene.
I think this is yet another example of us needing to raise the question if cops make us safe. I actually worked on a piece on this for Essence magazine, as you mentioned. I am a newly appointed senior news and politics editor for Essence, and for our upcoming issue, we raise this question and we talk to abolitionists. And you make that point very clear yourself when you say that he is an 18-year veteran. And there are other veterans of the police force where if we are recommending these piecemeal reforms, or we say cops just need more training, they need to be more astute. They need to just be aware of what's wrong. They don't always know what's right and what's wrong, except he's been on the force for nearly 2 decades. And I actually, in my many lives, I did social work in Paterson, New Jersey. And this is a community that's ravaged by a lot of poverty. It was a center for industrialization in the region. It's kind of a part of that Rust Belt. And so a lot of jobs have left Paterson. So why are we investing so much in police to perpetuate harm? And this story applies to so many predominantly Black communities all over the country. We need to be making investments in communities and divesting from police officers.
And that's why the defund the police movement, I know some people criticize the branding of it. I agree with it. I think the branding of it helped bring the conversation to a different dimension in our public narrative. And it's not to get rid of cops, it's literally to reprioritize, to reimagine what policing is or can be. And I made this point many times on this show. If your city or county, if they are bragging about hiring more cops, then they are failing you, because all they're telling you is that they are unable, they are not equipped to deal with criminality in that community. And so they're simply throwing money at it, hiring more cops, and nobody has ever arrested themselves out of socioeconomic dysfunction. It has never happened. Chicago has more cops than in the history of its charter. Chicago is paying people more to be police officers than in the history of its charter. They have never had this many cops on the street, and they have more crime than ever before. The model simply does not work if you do not address the underlying issues to criminality in the first place. Crimes of survival, poverty related, alcohol abuse, drug abuse, mental health disorders. And then you have out of control cops like this guy Finch, who decides to respond to an incident that's really a civil dispute. He takes control away from the officer that was doing it the right way and creates a criminal matter when there was no criminal matter at all.
Absolutely. I think we have to reassess whether the occasional safety that police officers provide, and mind you, police officers from studies solve only 2% of major crimes and 98% go unsolved. So is that occasional safety worth perpetual harm that these communities have been experiencing for decades, nearly a century?
You bring up that stat, and I remember when it came out, I talked about it heavily on my radio show, and I talked about it on this show as well. That was staggering to me, 2%. 2%. What other government office, what government department can have a 2% success rate? And by the way, the highest regionally was 11%. So at 11%, you're at the top of the food chain, and that's still at the bottom. So even if you're at the top of the top, you're at 11% solve rate as a police department. What government agency can have that kind of effectiveness or lack thereof and not be questioned by everybody who funds them?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens. We're going to keep our eye on this story because obviously justice is not justice just because of the arrest. We've seen this happen time and time again. We saw a state trooper who murdered a guy in Georgia. That's my humble opinion. Shot a man in the state of Georgia and got arrested for felony murder, got fired from the state troopers division, and then he got off on the grand jury. Everybody who investigated this, from the DA to internal affairs to the state trooper's office, they believed he committed murder of an unarmed black man inside of a car. But however this was presented to the grand jury, that is where he was exonerated for his actions. So the justice system is a system. It is not an incident or a one-time thing. Let me shift gears to Tucker Carlson. Man, this guy's something else. Now, I've already told you all, peep game on Tucker Carlson, okay? Here's what's really happening with Tucker. He is in a situation where somebody has some information on him. Now, I'm telling you now, I know what I'm talking about. I'm from Glenwood Road. He has some information out there on him that's embarrassing. He knows it's going to come out. He cannot stop it from coming out. Maybe it's connected to text messages, maybe it's connected to emails. So in order to mitigate the outcome, he pulled a Matt Gaetz. So what did his buddy Matt Gaetz do? Well, Matt Gaetz tried to make it about him being the victim of something. Well, the truth is he was just under investigation for trafficking underage girls, right? That's why he's under investigation. Now, I don't know what the there is for Tucker. I have no idea what it is, but it's big enough to where he decided to use his platform to get ahead of it. So now Tucker is claiming that the NSA, the freaking National Security Agency, not the FBI, not the Department of Justice, but literally an organization who by law cannot spy on domestic citizens. Now, I wondered why. I said, why did Tucker use the NSA as the agency after him? And I figured it out. The reason why he said the NSA was after him is because the NSA historically will not respond to accusations like that. The DOJ will, the FBI will, the state agencies will, but the NSA and the CIA typically will never respond to such an accusation. So he could have really gotten away with it without a response. However, the NSA decided to say, no, we are not targeting Tucker Carlson, and we never have, nor do we plan to. All right, so there is a public report that NSA read the emails of Fox News host Tucker Carlson, although NSA publicly denied targeting Carlson. I have serious questions regarding this matter that must be answered according to House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy. That's what Kevin said. The NSA cannot use a political instrument, and House Republicans will ensure accountability and transparency, according to Leader McCarthy. Now, I want you to remember, please remember, Donald J. Trump, with his Department of Justice, they put members of Congress under investigation in the Intelligence Committee. They put their staff under investigation and their family members. All of them were connected to this DOJ subpoena under Trump. But McCarthy wasn't the only one demanding an investigation. Now, this is the definition of privilege. Matt Gaetz is the personification of sit your ass down. Matt Gaetz has come out to defend his good buddy. So during a House Judiciary Committee hearing yesterday concerning legislative possibilities to handle prosecutorial abuse of power when prosecuting leaks, Gaetz was provided a forum to address his good buddy Tucker Carlson's allegations. Let's go to this Matt Gaetz video.
I believe that the Department of Justice and the intelligence community shouldn't threaten or spy on members of Congress, our staff, or the press for politics. President Biden believes the same thing. The most watched cable news host has been stating for the last several nights that the NSA has been monitoring his communications. And amazingly, the NSA has issued a statement that is so couched, it is functionally an admission. But what's interesting is that there is no denial that they were monitoring Tucker Carlson, even if he wasn't the target. And I think that there's probably somebody in Tucker Carlson's orbit that NSA was monitoring, and there's no denial that they caught up Tucker Carlson in that monitoring. And by the way, there's also no denial that there was a plan to leak the information to try to, in some way, embarrass Tucker Carlson. The only denial is that they weren't expressly trying to get his show off the air. And so, Mr. Chairman, I am inviting you to continue this bipartisanship. Join me in calling for an Inspector General investigation into any monitoring that the NSA or any other element of the intelligence community has engaged in relative to Tucker Carlson. Because these denials, these couch denials, raise more questions than they provide answers.
See, they're telling you where their heart is at. They are literally more concerned about investigating somebody that may have looked at a Tucker Carlson email that wasn't connected to Tucker Carlson, and Tucker Carlson wasn't the target of any investigation, and it may have been in the orbit of Tucker Carlson. They want you to investigate that, spend tax dollars on that, but they don't want you to find out what happened on January 6th. They don't want you to spend tax dollars to find out the terrorist connection to members of Congress for the insurrection at the US Capitol. No. They want to protect Tucker Carlson. Here's what the NSA put out as a statement. On January 28, 2021, Tucker Carlson alleged that the National Security Agency has been monitoring our electronic communications and is planning to leak them in an attempt to take his show off the air. This allegation is untrue. Tucker Carlson has never been an intelligence target of the agency, and the NSA has never had any plans to try to take his program off the air. You can read that in its entirety. Must I remind everyone of what Matt Gaetz did to his dear friend Tucker Carlson on live television? Here it is.
Again, I only know what I've read in the New York Times. I can say that actually you and I went to dinner about 2 years ago. Your wife was there, and I brought a friend of mine, you'll remember her, and she was actually threatened by the FBI, told that if she wouldn't cop to the fact that somehow I was involved in some pay-for-play scheme, that she could face trouble. And so I do believe that there are people at the Department of Justice who are trying to smear me, providing for flights and hotel rooms for people that you're dating who are of legal age is not a crime. And I'm just troubled that the lack of any sort of legitimate investigation into me would then convert into this extortion attempt.
I don't remember the woman you're speaking of or the context at all, honestly.
You was a damn lie, Tucker. You remember the dinner. You remember the context. He brought it up on your show because he wanted to remind you, for I don't know why, but he wanted you to know that he remembers, Tucker. And now all of a sudden, Tucker Carlson is under investigation by the NSA. Get real. My dear sister, what's your take with all this?
Well, it's politicians playing a game as usual and suddenly finding problems with issues that they've gone along with for multiple years. So we know that Republicans have been about the NSA. They've been about surveillance. We wouldn't have had the Patriot Act and all of these infringement of our civil rights if not for Republicans fighting for this after 9/11. And so you got now all of a sudden, I would say especially over the last 4 years, the sort of victim complex that Donald Trump has whipped among the Republican Party, where the things that they have stood for and backed for a very long time is suddenly now a problem now that they're experiencing it. So now there's surveillance against them, and now they're the victims. And this is actually a similar argument that Donald Trump made, I don't know if you recall, just 3 months or 4 months into his administration, saying that Susan Rice, the National Security Advisor, was responsible for unmasking people in his administration or people that were associated with Donald Trump, and trying to convince the public that the Obama administration had wiretapped his lines of communication. So a lot of this is them finally feeling that they have a sort of a nugget of an argument against the Democratic Party when these are things they've supported for a very long time.
You're right. My beef with both parties is that they both believe in big government. Let's be very frank about that. But as far as the intelligence and surveillance programs, Homeland Security was ushered in by a Republican president. We've had the consistent shredding or decreasing of our privacy rights for decades in this country, some voluntarily and others by force. But the issue remains These individuals who consider themselves patriots and for some reason are still able to pull off the narrative, let's look at what they are anti to now. They are anti-Capitol Police. They are anti the US military because of critical race theory. They are anti-intelligence agencies, but somehow they are still the party of law and order. It's amazing how they get away with that, but it's a massive public relations campaign. And I've said this for a long time. Republicans are so much better at messaging than Democrats. I mean, they would stick to it, especially when it's a lie.
Right, they're a party of power. I mean, obviously both of our two-party system, they believe in that. And Republicans just managed to whip up their base a little bit more with things that are just patently false. And they do that to maintain power. And that's not anything that should be, that's not news for us, but they wrap it and they couch it in these very noble terms that they are for the Constitution and for democracy and for freedom. Meanwhile, they're doing all these things to whip up their base in order to maintain power. And it doesn't even matter if they're being hypocritical and if it defies the things that they say that they're about, as long as they maintain seats in Congress, they maintain seats in their state legislative bodies.
Very well said. We got more on the other side. We're gonna go to a break. I got some news from Rudy Giuliani. I do have a question. Why is it that every time Rudy Giuliani talks to the press, it looks like he just came from a nap? We got more. It's indisputable.
I'm Nina Turner, and we are on the road to revolution, baby. And I know sometimes people talk about the angry black woman, but I'm gonna tell you something. If you ain't mad as a mofo about what's going on here, something's wrong with you. People ask me all the time, what are the lessons from 2020? Is that progressives have to get more organized and we gotta come together. We have to be as agile as neoliberals. The progressive movement has to understand that it's not just enough for us to have the right ideas. We are right on most of the ideas. We're not perfect, but we're 99% right because it is a humanitarian agenda, but we must get the power. We have to come together in a more unified way so that we utilize our power strategically to topple neoliberalism, and it's gonna happen.
Hi, I'm John, and I'm new to TikTok, but about 3 years ago, I started my daily political news show, The Damage Report, because I noticed this trend where every morning I was waking up to this tsunami of news that was just generally dreadful and horrifying and shocking, and I thought that if I could spend my time helping people to navigate this, serving as a bit of a life raft, pointing out which news is important and why, there are worse ways to spend your day. We're not an average news show, and we don't want our TikTok presence to be average either, so feel free to let us know what you'd like us to do on the platform, and maybe give us a follow at The Damage Report.
All right, Amazon Prime members, here's how you can subscribe for free on Twitch. Start by linking your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account, and then click that little subscribe or resubscribe button below the stream on Twitch. Scroll down and select the subscribe free with Prime button, and then you're finished. Close out immediately and share your little subscription alert with the chat. Send a cute message along with it, and bathe in the sweet, twitchy, Bezos-funded love. Hashtag Bezos Bucks.
Hey everyone, Matteo Scarapore here, author of Black Buck, which is Shop TYT's first fiction book ever. I'm honored. So, Black Buck is about a young man named Darren who's living in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. He lives with his mom, he has his girlfriend, he has his best friend, he has his neighborhood, and his neighborhood has him. Darren's also working at a Starbucks in Midtown Manhattan. And one day, this man, who's real suave and good looking, comes in and asks Darren to give him his regular. But for some reason, Darren says no. This man named Rhett Daniels, who's the CEO of a startup called Someone, located on the 36th floor of the same building, is impressed. And he invites Darren upstairs, and then he extends an offer to join his elite sales team. Darren reluctantly joins, and he soon realizes that he's not the only black salesperson there. He's the only black person in the entire company. So he goes through hell and back in order to make it to the top. And once there, he has status, money, power, but he says, you know what? I don't like being the token black guy. So he hatches a plan to help other people of color infiltrate America's tech startup sales teams, redefining what it means to be a minority in the workplace. This book definitely, if you couldn't tell, touches on many things that are relevant to this moment that we're all living in right now. But it's also connected to the many moments in history that have come before today. I hope that you read it. I hope that you enjoy it. And if you want to order a copy, go to shoptyt.com. Thank you, be well, and happy 2021.
Welcome back to Indisputable. Don't forget, make sure you are following us on social media, Indisputable TYT, Instagram, Twitter. Also, join us on the YouTube channel, Indisputable TYT. Indisputable TYT, free to subscribe, takes like 5 seconds. If you're watching me from somewhere other than that YouTube page, make sure you do a massive migration to their YouTube page ASAP, Indisputable TYT. Let me read some of these comments. TYT member Greyhound Dragon says, Dr. Richie, I noticed that you typically wear a pin on your lapel. I think it's called a lapel. It is called a lapel. If you don't mind me asking, what is it? Well, I do switch it up sometimes. Today is one of the universities I teach at, Beulah Heights University. I'm also a department chair at that college. But typically when I wear a lapel pin, it is either one of the colleges I teach at, or it is representing organized labor unions, okay? Diana. Disgusting display of a cop abusing a black man who simply wanted to see his children. A situation where a social worker would have been the right person for a domestic situation. Police reform now. Agreed. Greyhound Dragon says, the look on the girl's face who was behind Gates, she knows Gates is a moron. That the look says it all. You peep that too. Super Chat YouTube, love your show. Kaden Pat says, love your show. Just recently discovered it, and I just recently discovered you. Thank you. Patterson Cop. Mbali says, I really need doctor to break this down. I am so tired of this toxic and deadly behavior. That is just convenient extermination. Yeah. Jonathan Oderick says, Andrasic says, yes, preach, doctor. If the crime rate goes up, then the cops are at fault for not doing their job. Yeah, we got a lot more. I don't have time to get to all of them. Insomnia North says, you deserve it, Dr. Rich. I hope they keep you on past the summer. Well, thank you so much for that. Okay, my next story. Rudy Giuliani has teamed up with a guy named Vernon Jones. Vernon Jones, lifelong Democrat who turned Trump supporter and then turned Republican, is now running for governor of Georgia. Vernon Jones is a black male. Well, the gubernatorial candidate Vernon Jones had to physically step in between a heated discussion between Giuliani and a CNN reporter. This was at an Atlanta fundraiser where Giuliani came to basically endorse Vernon Jones. Now, why is Giuliani endorsing Vernon Jones? Because obviously Vernon Jones is paying him. Giuliani needs money, and there's a money trail somewhere, I guarantee you that. So here's part of it.
Is a Democrat appointed by a Democratic county leader. If they had ruled for Rudy Giuliani or Donald Trump, Andrew Cuomo wouldn't have appointed them anywhere. They'd have been shunned in New York. Do you have any idea what happens if you support Donald Trump in a left-wing place? You lose your job. You have your children threatened. You have to move. I expected that decision. It's intellectually dishonest. They say I lied. They don't look at the affidavits I offered to them that shows I'm telling the truth. It's part of the cover, and it's part of the problem we have when we have a one-party place like New York. It's the reason we have so much crime. The crime is Cuomo's crime and de Blasio's crime. They run the state. They run the state like it's a dictatorship.
I want to step in for a second.
Okay, here we go now. Here comes the savior, Bernie Jones, to save his guy, Giuliani. Now, I want to remind you that Bernie Jones is probably more extreme than Donald Trump. I actually know Bernie Jones. I've had him on my radio show. There was a time in his political career he actually had common sense. His common sense is completely gone now. Okay, Bernie Jones is a black Republican. I'm okay with that. We can have a good faith debate about policies. I have no issue with black Republicans other than policy, but I do have issues with sellouts. And here's what Bernie Jones said.
I want you to ask the Attorney General Garland. I want you to ask him, why is it that he wants to come to Georgia and investigate Georgia's so-called Jim Crow laws? But he won't investigate or even ask for a forensic audit in the 159 counties in Georgia. He won't even look at Stacey's law, how it was used in our elections versus state law. Now that's a fact, and that's an undisputed violation of the Constitution.
No, it's not. Bernie Jones, former CEO of DeKalb County, former state senator, former sheriff candidate, U.S. Senate candidate. Every time he has run for office, he ran as a Democrat until he found a path to power through the Republican Party and becoming a Trumpite to get there. He's incorrect about the Georgia Constitution. He's also incorrect about the audits. Georgia went through multiple audits for the election. The Georgia Constitution does not prohibit individuals from voting by way of a voter box or a vote box, whatever you want to call it. There's no prohibition. The local board of elections, they're able to make these determinations by statute. The law allows it. Now they have changed the law to restrict voter access for black and brown folks, people that would normally work a 9 to 5, souls to the polls. All of that has been impacted, and Bernie Jones supports those policies that impact voter access for black and brown people in the state of Georgia. But they do something that's quite typical. I've heard almost every black Republican reference a slave term or a control mechanism for black people if black people disagree with them. You hear black Republicans say, if a black person votes for a Democrat, they're on the Democratic plantation. Well, here's the reality. When a Democrat is president, black people win economically. They get paid more per year based on household median income than when a Republican is in office. Unemployment rate drops more significantly when a Democrat is in office for black folks, and higher education access and high school graduation rates increase when a Democrat is in office as it relates to the black community. So there's a reason why black folks vote for Democrats. Now, here's what Bernie Jones said about black folks that watch CNN.
See, here's CNN. Because CNN is about controlling Negroes. That's what it's saying. Controlling Negroes. That's what CNN is about. They don't want people of color to have conservative thoughts. He's here to keep me running and keep me from being the governor of the state. Why? Because liberals, they do not want blacks thinking for themselves.
So liberals don't want black people thinking for themselves, but Vernon wants you to think like him, okay? Here's what's ironic about this whole thing. Vernon Jones, he said that he's here to stop me from running and becoming governor of Georgia. No, Vernon, they were there for Giuliani. They weren't even there for you. You were just the side dish. He was the main course. My sister, you know Vernon. Y'all are from the same county.
Yes.
Tell the truth.
I was raised in DeKalb County, Georgia, for which Vernon Jones was our CEO, which is kind of like the mayor, the chief executive officer. That's right. The only sort of executive administrative position that we have in DeKalb County. And speaking of misleading statements, he said that you're not allowed to have conservative views being a black person. And Vernon Jones, he was very outspoken as the sort of centrist conservative Democrat. He had a picture of the Confederate General Robert E. Lee on his desk. This was over a decade ago that this was out in the news. It was known that he held conservative views as a Democrat. So he had a photo of the Confederate General Robert E. Lee. He voted for George Bush twice while he was the CEO of DeKalb County. And so the issue here as you said, is not so much about his conservatism and not being able to espouse those views, because quite frankly, a lot of those views that he shares that he espouses are shared amongst a wide array of Black people. We're not a political monolith. We're not an ideological monolith. We run the gamut of being radical. I consider myself a part of a Black radical tradition. He's a conservative. And yet he was allowed to do that. But this is about being able to stand out, because you're not necessarily going to stand out and amass power doing the sort of typical centrist Democratic things that he was doing while he was in office. So he's making a political play, and this is a performance. So much of our national politics is about political performance and doing certain signifiers. And so he has his Make America Great hat on in the background. He's not talking about policy. He's just talking about, again, these things that will rile up people to go vote for him so that he can get support during the gubernatorial race.
Very well said, and I didn't mean to put you out there like that. And I must admit, I'm also from DeKalb County. I just wanted to feel safe after you said it, okay? All right, shifting gears. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish a Karen would. Now, you know what we do. We go across the country and we highlight the Karens of the world, because Karens are dangerous. Meet the new drunk racial slur Karen. A Cincinnati woman says she and her 12-year-old daughter were shaken up after a drunk woman got in their faces and yelled racial slurs. She says the woman could barely stand and even appeared to be fighting with another woman who seemed equally as drunk, which is why she began recording. Let me take you to the first video.
Come and you go to jail. This is why.
Child? Did I tell you
you're
that?
trying to instigate something. Yeah, you are, and all these people here are witnessing it too.
Here's the thing.
You're intoxicated. You should probably go back over there and sit down.
Intoxicated?
And you're disturbing the peace to everybody.
Here's what I'm telling you.
I'm telling you, you might want to back up.
Here's the I don't give a about you or your child.
Just stay there, Kinley.
So go ahead and tell your friend to stay here, but the reality of it
You're gonna go to jail today. Yeah.
I'm going to jail for you or your What did you just say? That's exactly what the I said. That's exactly what I said. Hey, stop. Who the are you talking to like that?
Hey, back off.
She said, I'm not going to jail for you or your, and she spouted the N-word. Well, there's more.
There's a child over here. A child. A child. What? Yes, you're a restaurant. Tell me which right. I'm a mother. You're gonna get off me. Here's the thing. Walk away. I know more than that bitch. I know more than that bitch. And I know more than that bitch. Okay. You. I'm a grandma.
Hey, you're about to go to jail. Here's your ride. Here's your ride.
Jail, bitch.
Now, I'm sure when this Karen sobers up, she's going to say, oh my God, I'm not racist. I have Black friends. They will tell you. I'm sure she will blame it on the alcohol and say, I was intoxicated. Well, liquid courage to say what was already in your soul at first is what that was. Now, this Karen actually had consequences. According to the Boone County Sheriff's Office, this Karen was arrested for alcohol intoxication in a public place and second-degree disorderly conduct. She has bonded out of jail. And do we have a mugshot yet? All right, we don't have a mugshot yet. We've been looking high and low. If we can get it, we'll put it in post. Once again, this is insanity on top of insanity, but it is becoming so normalized in the tradition of how these Karens treat people they may disagree with.
Now, what's really confusing me is that she was talking to a white family. So she was talking to a white mom and her white child. And so if this is what she's saying, if this rolls off her tongue so easily to a white family, what is she saying about us?
Right.
She's doing this very publicly with a crowd around. So I don't know, she was obviously very confused, but being able to use that language so liberally, even when it doesn't even apply, there's a certain amount of hatred, in my view, that has to be inherent in you to be able to do that.
Yeah, and what's quite interesting is that when you look at this historically, right, you look at bigots of the past, and they are very similar. There was a time when white people were called N-word lovers if they had friends that were black, or if they decided not to engage in racist activity. And also members of the KKK, the Ku Klux Klans, would target white people who were not down with their program of racism and attribute that same word to them. So what I see in this situation, my dear sister, I see a very similar ideology, that there's a disagreement, and instead of having an adult conversation or even an adult argument based on whatever the situation is, she goes and she has to racialize it somehow by dropping the N-word, where, I mean, damn, that's where you decide to drop the N-word. You decide to just show the world you're racist when you could have just been rude and disrespectful. But you had to do the trifecta. You had to be rude, disrespectful, and racist, which means you earn a spot on my show. That's what that means.
Yeah, where's the regular racism or the regular rudeness at anymore? Why we gotta add extra on top of it now? You could just let that go.
Yeah, quite interesting. All right, this is something that really should be investigated, but also should be a public movement against. Swimming hats. All right, I'm not a swimmer. I watch it sometimes during the Olympics. It's kind of exciting to me, right? I know how to swim, but I did not know a swimming cap or a swimming hat was such a big deal as it relates to the athleticism of the swimmer. So swimming hats for Afro hair individuals is now barred from the Olympics as official wear. Because according to these officials, these folks, black people in particular, do not require caps of such size. It's called a soul cap, all right? Which is a swimming cap designed to accommodate diverse hair types. Has been denied by the regulatory body of Olympic swimming. And you see this graphic, you see come on now. How in the world is that going to give anyone an advantage inside of water? The swimming caps were barred by FINA on the grounds that to their best knowledge, the athletes competing at the international events never use, nor do they require to use caps of such size and configuration. The committee went on to describe the swim caps as unsuitable due to them not, and I quote, following the natural form of the head. Now, once again, this only applies to black women in particular with a bunch of hair. That's who it applies to, okay? Here's what the co-founders of Soul Cap said. Co-founders of Soul Cap say they are disappointed in this failure to acknowledge the diversity of competitive swimmers, particularly in a year where we have seen an increase in swimmers from ethnic minority backgrounds qualifying for the Olympics. Now, Soul Cap, brilliant idea, because they're right. You have more people of color swimming than ever before. It continues to go up every year, the number of people participating in this sport. That's a great thing. It diversifies the industry. Remarkable. Soul Cap was created in 2017 when the founders started adult swimming lessons for the first time. They met a woman with Afro hair who was struggling with the size of her swim cap. Since then, the brand has provided 40,000 swim caps to swimmers globally. Here's what I really detest about this Olympic rule. It only adversely impacts women of a particular hairstyle. That's it. It's only people it will impact adversely. My dear sister, your thoughts?
This is a very clear example of what we would call cultural incompetence, because the denial of these swim caps isn't they didn't say anything about really how it will impact their performance.
That's right.
The statement that they said was that, well, our swimmers have never used it before, so why do we need it now? So they're hearkening back to the sort of sense of tradition when you've had a sport that traditionally hasn't had a lot of African Americans. So of course they haven't used swim caps of that size before. And the swimmers, now you're seeing more Black swimmers who are entering this field, and they're saying, actually, this is useful for me because our hair, for the most part, is naturally coily, so it's bulkier. And it is definitely very difficult to put inside of a swim cap. I remember this from my days when I was required to have swim lessons in college. And so we would have these headaches because you had to fit all of this hair, wrap your braids up, put it inside a swim cap, and it would actually cause you headaches because it would be so tight around the head. And so this is trying to resolve a problem so that their performance wouldn't be negatively impacted. It's not that it actually gives them an advantage. And if you see Black swimmers, Black women in particular, when they take their swim caps off, often they have relaxed hair. So essentially they'll have to go through a chemical process when chlorine is already going to damage your hair. You have relaxers that damage your hair, and you're saying that this is the only way at the end of the day that they'll actually be able to use the standard swim caps is if they flatten their hair out through a chemical process. So I really do hope that they listen to the company, that they listen to women of color, specifically Black women who are talking about this, because it's really just a matter of ignorance.
Yeah, they need to get it together. My dear sister, I appreciate you. Malika Jabali, tell people how they can follow you and get access to your remarkable work.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rashad. I am on Twitter, that is common, Malika Jabali. You can see my name probably somewhere in the comment caption section for TYT, but most of my work is gonna be at Essence as a senior news and politics editor. So it's just essence.com/author/Malika Jabali.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for being on Indisputable. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
All right, we got more on the other side. It's Indisputable. Stick and stay.
We are on to something that is going to be amazing, but what we need is your help.
The number one problem is there's too much power in too few hands.
Every single problem that we have can be traced back to dark money.
They take large donors, they serve large donors.
So these handful of gatekeepers try to dictate everything.
Like all of you already know, they don't work for you, they work for their donors. So fire them and hire people who will only work for you that say no corporate back money.
We are going to change the way we elect candidates in this country.
Uncorrupted Democrats. We're gonna fight for the issues and win on policy.
This is incredibly personal. We need free healthcare for everyone.
We're fighting for $15 minimum wage, single payer healthcare, debt-free college, and we are gonna get money out of politics once and for all.
I've taken a public pledge not to accept any corporate money.
Because the last thing we're gonna do is go into another presidential election and run a corporatist against a populist candidate.
At some point, the buck needs to stop, and it's gonna stop with us. It's gonna stop with Justice Democrats.
So who are we?
People who do not take corporate PAC money.
We're relying on small donors.
99.9% of our contributions came from people.
You're a Justice Democrat, so you don't take any corporate PAC money.
I'm not influenced by money.
As a Justice Democrat, I made that pledge.
Not a penny. Absolutely not.
I will go to Congress unbossed and unbought.
We try to create a government which works for all of us.
That is what America's about, and that's what a representative democracy should be about.
We are just getting warmed up here.
Vote for uncorrupted Democrats. The fight starts now, it starts today, and it starts with you.
I've been honest with him. Like, yeah, I was upset with you and I shouldn't have done it. But instead I was like, I'm just trying to protect my engagement ring.
Did you know that more than 20% of the world's oxygen comes from the Amazon? Why? Because of trees. I know what you're thinking. Of course! So what do we want to do? We want to plant more trees so we can save the climate. It's quite literal. So that's what leads to our new partner, Plant Your Change. Love it. It's so easy. What they do is You take the credit or debit cards you already have and you plug it into the system. And if you so choose, you get to round up every purchase to the nearest dollar and they plant a tree for you, okay? Now you could also choose if you wanna do it on only certain kinds of purchases or only so often, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. But literally every cent makes a difference here. It's plant your change. And if you wanna know more information, just go to tyt.com/trees. Let's go save the planet together.
Now, top. No. No.
Today, a terrible day for the internet, a terrible day for America. The internet as we know it is not going to exist anymore.
A real dark day for information and yet another way that they're bleeding out the democracy.
We're now going to have these gatekeepers of information deciding what we can and can't see, and that's what scares me the most.
Whether you're conservative or progressive or anywhere in the middle, this is the one thing we should all agree to. Protect the internet, because the establishment is coming for it. Don't let them destroy the internet.
Yep, welcome back. It's indisputable. Let me read some of these viewer comments. We got a lot of them. TYT member Cajun Dragon says, please, Dr. Richey, give us more jokes about Rudy and what a doofus he is. Keep up delivering the greatest afternoon news show. That's indisputable. Well, thank you. Eileen, middle-aged dragon mama says, I would love Dr. Richey to have Matt Gaetz in the bullpen. Do you think Dr. Richey would finally lose it? No, I would love to have Matt Gaetz in the bullpen. Super chat, YouTube. Keita Boot Forever says, Doc, I know you don't want to, but you and Nina Turner in the Senate will push the needle where it needs to go. You articulate facts so perfectly. Well, thank you for that compliment. Nicole Smith, Vernon Jones has never been a Democrat. The proper title is Dixiecrat. By the way, love your show, Doc. You're right, Dixiecrat would be more fitting. About the swim cap, Ricardo the Lion-Hearted. If the white swimmers had or have guts, they would threaten to boycott swimming events. Well said, they're part of the same industry. You look out for your colleagues, right? Yeah. About the Karen video, Vanessa Maldonado says, she's intoxicated with whiteness. Yeah. Twitch. Karam Dio girl. I'm sure I said that wrong, but please accept my apologies. Even with our hair braided down, the regular size is still too small and the cap will come off. That's what the company was trying to solve for black women. And Insomnia Nora says, he totally just Kanye'd that press conference. He really did. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I have a remarkable young lady on this show, Dr. Pamela Gurley. We're gonna talk about her book and some other issues impacting black women in America. Her book is I'm Not a Stereotype, I Am Her, HER. That was written in 2019. How mentally taxing it is to be a black woman in America. Wow. Thank you, Dr. Gurley, for being on the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Let me first say this. Before you came on the show, I just did a segment about how swim caps made for black women have been banned by the Olympic Committee. Not because they give anyone an unfair advantage, not because it is a distraction for other swimmers, just because they don't understand it, basically. So once again, it just illuminates how cultural norms are biased against black women in particular, especially in sports like this. But let's talk about your background. Tell me why it's important to highlight the reality of being a black woman in America.
One, we are the most unrepresented, no matter how successful we are, no matter what we do. It's very difficult. A prime example is the caps. We want to protect our hair and take care of our hair just like we want to take care of our bodies. But we get subpar medical treatment. And if we don't advocate for the things that are important to us, then we kind of fail ourselves. We fail our communities, and we fail the young ladies that are coming up behind us. So I think it's important for us to be vocal and say what it is that we need to be represented and to have fairness and equity. That's my main thing. It's not diversity, it's equity that's very important for us to have. Equity and equality, and they are not the same thing.
I want you to speak on that, sister. I teach a course at the university, a policy course where we illuminate the life of Dr. King. And Dr. King, up until 1964, he was talking about equality. After 1964, he was actually talking about equity. Dr. King said it's one thing to sit at a table where you want to sit, it's another thing to own the restaurant. So he started to talk about equity. He talked about a universal basic income. He talked about owning land. He talked about equitable factors so that outcomes could be impacted. I want you to break down the difference between equality and equity.
So I think, first of all, I always say that when people say, well, what's the difference? You can always tell equity and the difference between equality when you look at the marginalized and you look at the wealthy. That right there tells you the clear difference between the two. The other part is when we ask for equity, and like you say, when you have that seat at the table, diversity can put you at the table, but the people around that table don't have to give you a voice. So what's the point? Diversity can bring you in, but if they're not going to give you equal pay, what's the point? You don't have equality. Equity will also get you places that equality can't get you. So I think that's important for people to recognize that there's a real clear distinction about having and then partially receiving.
I think that's well said. And we have been so confused about what equality is that we have accepted a model of equality that just is optically equal. That's it. The optics of it seem equal, but there's no actual outcome that's equal. The disparity is still present. So what has to happen for our Black sisters, our African-American sisters in America? What can I do as a man? What can this audience do as men and women? What can we do to help promote this agenda?
One, we have to speak up. Two, we have to advocate and not part-time advocate for it. I think that speaking up is one thing. This is why I decided to write books, not just to women, but for everyone. I've had, white women specifically and white men come to me and say, I want to read your book, but I'm not sure it's for me. And I always say the only way you can advocate for what Black people need is to be a part of the conversation, but understand what the conversation look like in order to give a voice, have a voice, and be a voice.
Very well said. Very well said. I believe that racism, bias, prejudice exist on the spectrum. And there are some people who can be helped and there are some people who simply cannot be. And sometimes, especially with implicit bias, you're so unaware that if you are challenged through an experience, you can become aware. You can wake up from the slumber. How can people get access to your book and follow you?
So my books are really, all of them are available on Barnes and Nobles. My book, I Am Not a Stereotype, I Am Her, is at Walmart, and as well as Books and Media and Barnes and Noble. It's available overseas as well. You can also get all of my books on my personal website, which is www.unapologeticbydrg.com. You can look at my website. You can also get them there, and they'll point you to it, which is www.iamdrpgurley.com.
Dr. Gurley, thank you for being on Indisputable. Thank you for the fight you continue every day.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right, up next, ladies and gentlemen, the bullpen.
You're about to watch some behind the scenes footage of the Young Turks.
Ooh.
Now these are partial videos. If you want to get all of them, you become a member, go to tyt.com/join, and you'll get all the behind the scenes of me, Anna, John, JR, a little bit reality show like, tyt.com/join, and enjoy this.
You know what you're seeing behind me? Jersey, hold. Watch me flip this camera. However I flip it. Do I flip it like this? No, I just took a picture. I'm bitsing right now.
What?
Behind the scenes.
Oh, okay. For members? I don't have my face on.
She doesn't have her face on, folks. Oh, that's JR's ass right there.
You can't take 5 minutes off, can you?
No, I can't, Johnny Pie. I said it was live stream, but I was lying. It's not a live stream. It's just for members. Bitsy, this is my cat. You know what his name is? Kiki Cat.
Animals are innocent.
Control room and the insanity is obviously there.
Right now, as you can see, I'm directing or tech directing.
I'm so happy to be here.
This is what like a Labor Day beard looks like for Cenk. Man, you're a Young Turks viewer if you recognize me like this.
Such a big fan. Oh, thank you. You are the one person in my life I would love to meet.
What's going on, guys? This is a Bitsy or a BTS or behind the scenes with Hassan Piker, aka Woke Bay.
Oh, hi, I didn't see you there.
I have finished my show, The Damage Report, and now I get into a really awkward time of the day.
When I'm sitting, the control room is right there. So I can see Bart.
And this is the Pittsburgh office, by the way. I'll refer to often as the boiler room.
You see how it's ripped? Is it super unprofessional to wear that at a business meeting? Or am I like cool rebel?
And I just finished doing the power panel and I'm fired up.
What do you do for TYT? Not a whole lot.
If you're frantically tweeting at us that something's broken, thank you, because I'm fixing it.
And thank you for being a TYT member.
Super last thing, because there's always got to be a super last thing. Oh, that was disastrous. This has been behind the scenes, behind the scenes.
All right, welcome to Dr. Rashad Richard Indisputable. This is going to be quite interesting. I don't know if you can handle this much truth on any day of the week. The unrest inside of the black community and communities that support them. It's because these cops are not held accountable. You have a family calling 911, and that family is expecting help, not expecting their loved one to be killed by the very people they pay to protect and serve them. Did you ever notice a cop that you work with call any black person the N-word or target people because they were black? Nope. But we disagree that somehow police officers are not also subject to the same systemic biases and racism as any other level of law enforcement.
It sounds like for everybody's need who wants to crucify the cops without looking at it.
No, crucify bad cops, brother.
Of
bad
course,
cops.
We don't need the government to step into our lives mandating that we should be wearing a mask.
You think you putting on a mask, Trey, is government intrusion, but you don't think the government telling a woman what she can or cannot do with her body it isn't government intrusion.
Where does life begin?
You want to go there? I can read it to you, brother.
You seem very well prepared. Certainly more.
Of course, why would I not be well prepared? They don't stop, I don't stop. Racism won't stop, I won't stop. Systemic bias won't stop, I won't stop. People still need health care, so I won't stop. People still need criminal justice systems reform throughout this country, so I won't stop, and you won't stop either.
Climate is changing fundamentally, extremely, and non-linearly. It's becoming worse now. It's not when the levees burst that is the problem. It's in the anticipation of that.
So I hope every human being is safe. And by human beings, I do not include multinational corporations, especially the ones that started climate change in the first place.
What we're currently doing right now in cutting emissions is clearly not enough. There will be ramifications to what Trump is doing. I don't want people to suffer, but I feel like there's gonna be a lot of suffering because we have an imbecile as our leader.
Welcome back to Indisputable. Let me read some of these comments. All right, Indisputable TYT, make sure you follow us on Twitter, Instagram. Also join us, subscribe to the YouTube channel, Indisputable TYT. Super chat, Charles Massey says, you mean to tell me that white people not only think they own the water, but now they can tell us how to look in it? Well, not all white people, but the ones that sit on the Olympic Committee, yeah. Stefan Miles Cook, loving her perspective, and yes, doctor, what can we do? Well, she did break it down. Tracy Ravenhawk says she's right. Look at Serena Williams, the most disrespected athlete in the world. Chong Pak says, thank you, Dr. Richey. You make me choke on my bowl. LOL. Love every minute of it. Glad you said so. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the bullpen. In the bullpen today, we have Carrie Sheffield. Ms. Sheffield is a senior fellow at Independent Women's Forum. She has a long, extensive career in broadcasting and reporting, Politico and The Hill. She used to be a reporter for. Look up her bio when you get a moment. Ms. Sheffield, thank you for being on Indisputable.
Dr. Richey, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So today we're going to chop it up about CRT, critical race theory. So I do not want to presume what you believe about critical race theory. So let me just ask you, what are your thoughts about critical race theory?
Sure. So I from the very get-go, I just want to say I very much agree that we should teach unvarnished, take no whitewashing of history, truth, honest reconciliation about what our history is in America. And it's true, we have done a horrific job of treating African Americans as slaves. We should not shy away from controversial history, by no means. So I want to put that out there first. We need to go over it all, not just slavery, but also Jim Crow, segregation, all of it. My issue, though, is that I think that CRT takes it a step further and then basically rejects Dr. King's wish, rejects the idea that he said that we should look at each other by the content of our character and not by the color of our skin. And so that's where a lot of people, including myself, are pushing back, at least on the way it's being presented in schools today, which is to divide people based on race. That if you're white, you are inherently, no matter what you do, genetically, you are a suppressor. And if you are Black or Latino, or especially Black or any minority, you are inherently oppressed. I just think that that is toxic, and I think it's gonna trap people and it's gonna create a paranoia between the races at a time when we need to be coming together.
You know, I really do take offense when people misuse the word and the philosophy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So what you just stated was inaccurate. Dr. King actually believed in the tenets of critical race theory. I will give you an example. Dr. King said that for Black people to gain an economic footing in America, the American government needs to do a massive social program known as universal basic income for Black people only. Why? Because he believed that the issue was no longer the individual racist in America, but in fact the system itself. And the system he was talking about in particular was the system of economy. And he said, in order to correct this system, you can't correct it by white people saying it's okay for you to eat at our restaurants or it's okay for you to stay at our hotels. You literally have to remedy the problem by way of a system approach. Dr. King also said in an interview with NBC after 1964 that his American dream had actually become an American nightmare. He also said, Ms. Sheffield, that he did not believe white Americans were as racist as they were. His popularity during the era that you're talking about was at 6%. The nonviolent Dr. King that you celebrate today, only 6% of white Americans had a favorable view of him. He talked about the system approach as it relates to the military and how the Vietnam War was a war that sent Black people off, Black children off to be slain, when domestically they had no respect at home. So when you take one excerpt from one speech out of context in order to apply it to a macrocosm of his philosophy, it simply doesn't fit. Dr. King believed that many of our challenges in the United States of America could be connected back to a system reality rather than just individual racist people.
Well, this is why I love having dialogues, and I appreciate you having me on your program to talk about this, because Yeah, I agree. We should absolutely debate. Dr. King is one of my heroes. I've read his books. The very last book, and I agree, you shouldn't just look at one speech. If you look at the very last book that he wrote, he delved into this question because you said that I am lionizing the peaceful Dr. King. He believed that until his death. He never believed in violence. He never believed in what we're seeing with the rioting and the burning down of predominantly Black neighborhoods by BLM. He rejected that explicitly. In the very last book he wrote before his death, he said that he was suspicious and he was angry and he disagreed. He said, I understand where they're coming from, but it's ultimately flawed. This notion of using violence to achieve your means. He completely rejected it. And that is
Sheffield.
And so I also want to.
Okay, hold on, wait a minute, ma'am. In all due respect, Ms. Sheffield, number one, we're talking about critical race theory, number one. You just started a whole new conversation about protest, then violence that does not connect to critical race theory whatsoever. There's no connector there. But since you want to go down that rabbit hole, I can go down that rabbit hole with you. There is nothing violent.
Absolutely, there are many. If you were to ask the BLM rioters, do you support critical race theory? There would be virtually zero people who would disagree with it. So absolutely, that the CRT was developed at elite universities, and it's been used, sadly, but to brainwash elite people to use their megaphones to perpetuate. Like, for example, I think I agree with you that there are white people who created systems that have suppressed Black Americans, and let me tell you who those people are. FDR, who created redlining in this country? It was a white liberal. So
I don't give a damn who created it. If it's a racist policy, it's racist policy. But Ms. Sheffield, sure. I have limited time on the show. I must address what you've said about violence, that Black Lives Matter, that they are somehow burning down their own cities. See, once again, that's the whole trickery that you all utilize in order to maintain your position. Black Lives Matter as a movement, and Black Lives Matter as an organization, they have never burnt down any community. And I will ask you, how many members of Black Lives Matter have been arrested for terrorism? How many?
When you're talking about, I guess it depends.
How many members of Black Lives Matter have been arrested for burning down their own communities? How many members of the group have been arrested for that?
That's called terrorism.
How many members of Black Lives Matter, because you said these are Black Lives Matter protesters engaging in violence. How many of them have been arrested for it?
Minnesota, we're talking about.
How many have been arrested, madam?
If you invite me back, I will give you a detailed list.
Okay, next time have your facts together before you come into the bullpen. The answer is zero. Not one member of Black Lives Matter has ever been arrested for destroying property or burning down a building. However, you have plenty of individuals who were connected to the terrorist attack that took place on January 6th that were connected also to what? Trump campaign, Trump supporters, Trump congressional people, Trump surrogates. Would you like me to blame you for what happened on January 6th? Or would you like me to blame the people that engaged in that activity only? Which one would you like me to do?
The philosophy of critical race theory is trying to pit races against each other.
No.
And that is not a philosophy
that is not correct.
Donald
What is
Trump
critical race theory?
It is not a philosophy that I believe.
What is critical race theory?
Critical race theory is a belief that there is inherently oppressors and the oppressed. That no matter what you do, the color of your skin in America will put you in a camp.
That's not what critical race theory teaches.
That's what it teaches. I mean,
no, it does not. I teach, madam, I've been teaching critical race theory before it became a great evil for you all. I've been teaching critical race theory for 5 years. What you just said is inaccurate. That is not what critical race theory teaches. Critical race theory teaches that systems are biased against marginalized people. That's what critical race theory teaches. And you can de-emphasize individual racist people. In other words, according to CRT, if you eliminated most racist people in America, let's say all of a sudden, most racist white people woke up tomorrow and said, I am no longer going to be racist, right? It still would not change the inequity that exists connected to race. Because the systems, as you have admitted on my program, the systems that exist are still in place. You admitted critical race theory on my show. You said these systems exist. Critical race theory only says you must analyze these systems so that you can find remedy to these systems. And that is the only way you will start actually creating equitable outcomes. But if you keep focusing on individual racist people without focusing on these systems, you will always have unequal outcomes. That's what it teaches. You agreed to that on this program, madam.
I agree to you that absolutely there are systems that were put in place by white liberal racists like FDR, like LBJ. LBJ was a racist. So it's really sad that the
you want to politicize it.
No, I'm talking about the structures. The structures of
who wrote the Constitution? Were those liberals? Were those liberals that told me that I'm 3/5 of a man? Who wrote the Declaration of Independence that said Native Americans are savages? Who wrote that?
The 3/5 of a person was put in place by the North to punish the South because the Southerners wanted to have the full representation, and they said, no, we're punishing you because you have slaves. That's why they put the 3/5 because the Northerners didn't like slavery. The Southerners wanted them to be as full.
Here's the benefit that you have. You have a particular privilege. While you can argue and debate based on the nuances of what political party these folks subscribe to, I'm here telling you that as a black male, I do not give a damn what political party they belong to, because we have racist people that are Democrats, we have racist people that are Republicans, we have racist people that bear no party affiliation whatsoever. So their party affiliation means nothing to me. I'm trying to fight system oppression that exists in the United States of America, system oppression that you agree exists. So the question is, why are you not presenting a remedy to that systematic oppression?
Okay, let me go through, if I can go through some of these policies, because we're in agreement here. And my problem politically, and then I'll get into the systems. Politically, I think it's heartbreaking and tragic that the Democratic Party has used black voters and exploited them to keep the systems in place. Systems, for example, like redlining. FDR, a white liberal, was the one who created redlining. He did it after World War II. And the redlining is the precursor to what we see now, this system of rewarding bad teachers and keeping black and brown students trapped in failing schools. That was a system that was created by white liberals, and it's maintained by white liberals like Joe Biden and the leader of the National Teachers Unions. They're white liberals. Let me tell you another group in Hollywood. The Hollywood executives are white liberals. They donate to Democrats. They're progressive. They don't do, if you're a conservative in Hollywood, you are shut out. But guess who profits off the exploitation of black men and black women in Hollywood? White liberals. They're the ones who are creating the stereotypes of black men as criminals, of black women. They're the ones who profit all of this. So
let me ask you a question.
Let me tell you another system.
Okay, let me, ma'am, I don't have unlimited time. You got to make your points and then allow me to respond. As I said before, I could care less about their party affiliation. I put my foot up a Democrat as soon as I will put it up a Republican. So you got the wrong guy for that. I'm an equal opportunity individual. So let's be very clear about what you're saying.
Because most black voters, sadly, are not. They're being deceived by the Democrats.
Well, let me explain to you why black. I'm glad you brought that up. Let me explain to you why most black voters do vote for Democrats. When you take an analysis over the last 30 years of Democratic presidents versus Republican presidents, unemployment decreases significantly under Democratic presidents, and it actually goes up under Republican presidents by 2%. When you look at household median income increases by roughly $1,000 per year under Democratic presidents, and it actually goes the other way, goes in the opposite direction under Republican presidents. Under Democratic presidents, access to higher education increases, more black people go to college, more black people graduate from high school, more black people are able to get involved in trade and skills that are paid for and subsidized through government grants and programs. The question would be, why would black folks not vote for Democrats when they win economically, socially, politically, and educationally under their systems or under their policies? That is the reality. Those are facts that black people historically win under Democratic leadership more so than under Republican leadership. Now, does that mean Democrats do it all correctly? Hell no. No, there are plenty that Democrats should do more of. But I challenge you to name one policy that has changed the outcome of black Americans in the United States of America that currently is being championed by a Republican.
Absolutely. Well, if you look at the first 3 years of the Trump administration, because the fourth year was the wild card with the pandemic, for the first 3 years, and I believe this is why Black men and Black women both increased their vote for Trump from 2016 to 2020. That's a fact. Yeah. Not only Black voters, Latino voters, and Asian voters increased their margin for President Trump, because throw out the COVID year, because that was a wild card, a 1 in 100-year event. The first 3 years, we actually saw the record-shattering wealth for Black Americans, wage increase for Black Americans, business ownership for Black Americans. So the policies themselves that Republicans through the tax plan, and we know the businesses who were hiring these Black and minority workers, they said they credited the tax plan that the Republicans passed for them to be able to hire more workers. So that's a big thing. Another, you mentioned education. President Trump signed permanent support for HBCUs. Every year under Democrats and Republicans, they had to come back and ask for more. But President Trump ensured that that would be in perpetuity in place, that funding that deserves to be in funding. So there's that. And also on the issue of immigration, I spoke to the niece of Martin Luther King, Alveda King. She said that what President Trump was doing on immigration, that it was helping Black workers. He said that she said that protecting our borders, it's a human right. It's a human right for Black US citizens or any US citizen to be protected against illegal workers who are coming in and flooding the market with illegal labor that suppresses the wages.
Allow me to respond. I will tackle the HBCU comment first. I'm a graduate of an HBCU. I lecture at an HBCU. You're incorrect about what Donald Trump actually did to impact HBCUs. Now, I will also say, to qualify my content, I will also say that President Barack Obama was no friend to HBCUs in comparison. All right, I will say that clearly, and I said it during his administration. What Donald Trump did was de facto defund HBCUs. He signed a proclamation that never got funded because he never fought for it in the budget. It never increased the overall budget of HBCUs. He then defunded HBCUs by proposing from the White House budget the elimination of something called the Federal TRIO program. Many people did not pick up on this because a lot of folks don't know what the Federal TRIO program is. The Federal TRIO program is a federal subsidy for what's called educational talent search and Upward Bound. Those programs are utilized in communities, primarily urban communities, where you have individuals who are trying to become first-time college students in their families. It is a lifeline between HBCUs and depressed communities all across America. He proposed to defund that program every single time, eliminating and reducing significantly the budget for HBCUs for that particular federal grant. That is a fact. Let me go to the employment issue. You talk about massive employment. The truth is the employment trajectory was moving in the right direction under President Barack Obama. And under President Barack Obama, you had more employment. It was a history record-setting employment increase under President Barack Obama, and Donald Trump maintained the numbers, but then something happened in the job market. The Trump administration started using what's called a U3 rating system rather than a U6 rating system to talk about their job numbers. Not many people discuss it. A U3 rating system says if you work for 1 hour in this one survey month, the administration is going to count you as employed. A U6 rating system provides context to those numbers and says, if you work 1 hour, we're not saying you're employed, we're counting that as 1 hour of contract work. The U6 rating system contextualizes the data so that you know who has a seasonal job, who has a job that pays the bills, or who has a job that is a contract job that really they're not working any hours. But they did a trickaroo. They used a U3 rating system and then decided to proclaim that they were somehow fixing the jobs economy, and they were not. Here's the other reality under Donald Trump. More Black people were having to work multiple jobs in order to make ends meet. In addition to that, household median income fell under Donald Trump, and also home ownership with African Americans fell under the presidency of Donald Trump. And black people started to make less per dollar than their white counterparts for the same job with similar background and experience because the DOJ refused to prosecute open discrimination at major companies all across the country. So now you have black folks that were making up to 80% on the dollar of their white counterparts. It dropped down dramatically because of the DOJ's policy. So that's not a win for black people, but it is the way that Trump used it in order to promote his numbers. Third, let's talk about immigration. I'm glad you brought up immigration. Brown folks are not my enemy. You see, brown folks have never been the enemy of black folks. The number one job destroyer in the United States of America is automation. Automation is the number one job destroyer. But we don't talk about automation. We talk about poor immigrants. Well, explain this to me, Ms. Sheffield. Explain this to me. The same federal law that says it is against the law to work undocumented in the United States. That same federal law has a subsection that says it's against the law to hire them. So why do I see 600 brown workers being arrested at a warehouse, but I don't see the CEO being taken away in handcuffs? I don't see the hiring manager being taken away in handcuffs. I don't see the HR director being taken away in handcuffs. Why is it that I'm only seeing the people who are doing the daily labor being taken away in handcuffs when it's a violation of the same federal law?
Hey, I'm with you. These employers should not be hiring them, and they should be punished to the full extent. You and I are very much in agreement with that, absolutely. And the other issue, and I really appreciate that we're responding and we're having a dialogue about substance, because this doesn't happen. So I just want to thank you. So, but in terms of, like I said, go to the HBCU presidents themselves. There was statement after statement. And so yes, there might be some specific issues that you took that deserve attention, but overall that you heard from the leaders themselves, they were very grateful. And also the voters themselves, again, don't take my word for it. Look at the Black and Latino and Asian voters who voted for Trump at higher numbers than before, in record levels for the GOP. And look, it's nothing to write home about for the GOP. They have a lot more work to do, but I want to talk about a few other policies. That includes criminal justice reform, the First Step Act, that over 90%
Well, let's do this. I'm running out of time, but I do need to point out that Mitt Romney got more black votes than Donald Trump. So you can't just say, oh, Trump magically had more black people.
No, Trump got a higher percentage both in 16 and 20 than Romney.
I checked that. I checked the date on that.
Yeah,
say that again.
I wrote about this for CNN and other places. Romney only got 5% in 12, and I believe it was 6% for. It was definitely higher for Trump in 16.
So you're saying
went up.
Okay, so Biden. I'm sorry, not Biden, but Romney got 5% from black folks, and you're saying Trump got 6% from black people.
Yeah, again, it's not things to write home about.
All right, I'll check it. Yeah, but go ahead. We got 2 minutes. I want you to have the final word. Go ahead.
Thanks, Doctor. Well, so as I was saying, it's not just the other issues we're talking about, the campus assault reform. So Obama put in these things that denied due process when anyone on a college campus is accused of sexual assault. And Trump said, we're not gonna let that happen. And the number one benefactor, according to a study of what Trump did on college campuses for people who are accused of sexual assault, it benefited young black men to allow them to have justice brought to them, because it's sort of the similar. I had one leader tell me that what was happening on college campuses, they ended up targeting young black men. It was like a Jim Crow era type.
All right,
policy.
we have 1 minute. Ms. Sheffield, can you explain to me quickly why the Trump administration decided to defund re-entry programs, halfway houses, and took away the Pell Grant program inside of prisons that absolutely helped individuals not engage in recidivism after release?
Well, I'd have to look at the specific details of that. I do know overall that recidivism and the First Step Act, and looking at what Trump did and his people, Jerron Smith, who's a friend of mine there, he worked with groups all over the spectrum. He worked with my friends with a number of civil rights organizations, and Jones. They were for this. So I'd have to look at the specifics of what you're talking about, but I do know.
And that's fair.
That it was something that was very much supported by many leaders on both sides of the aisle.
Absolutely. And I wish they would have completed it by making sure the other variables, the wraparound services were in place as well. You can't take one step forward and then take 10 steps back on the policy and tell me it's a good thing. 0.02%, less than 1% of the black population was impacted by the First Step Act. That's just to provide some context. Ms. Sheffield, it's been a pleasure to have you on Indisputable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to remember a few things. Take care of yourself, take care of each other, and take care of the planet. And remember, the truth is always indisputable.